Councilor Reese, can you mute your mic?
Can I what?
Can you mute your mic? If you're not talking, you're gonna have to mute it. There's a lot of background. Great.
And we're ready whenever you are, Mayor.
Good evening, and thank you for remotely attending tonight's City Council meeting. The camera in the council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. The platform we are using has a raise hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the upper right-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click the button and be given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Skelly,
Here.
Councilor Dillabaugh,
Here.
Councilor Fisher,
Here.
Councilor Kennedy, here. Councilor Powers,
Here.
Councilor Reach,
Here. Here.
Councilor Scamperly,
Here.
quorum present.
Councilor Reese is unexpectedly unable to attend in person and is therefore participating remotely. I would ask Councilor Reese to state his location now for the record, please.
I'm at my house, 107 Jersey Ave in Arkansas.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 presentations tonight, and we will begin with City Manager Stephen Jelly regarding the status of the city and the 2022 priorities.
Good evening, Council. Excuse me. I apologize tonight. The presentation that I prepared, I'm not going to be able to give to you. Upon review today, Kathy and I have been extensively looking at the new law that was passed by the governor that requires us, anything that council is going to see during the meeting has got to be presented now with the agenda. So we can't bring in anything at this point. So we've had to decline some correspondence that came in at the last minute today. And so I don't want to be seen as violating that myself. So I will send you the report that I had prepared for this evening, some recommendations for priorities, and we'll cover it at the next meeting. And for council's information, Kathy can send you the sections of the law, but sometime in the November timeframe, we were notified, and based on the remote meetings, that any information, any material that council is going to see or use that's within our knowledge has got to be sent with the agenda now, so the public has access to it prior to the meeting. So we had originally thought that the documents that were being referenced in there were things like resolutions, official correspondence, things like that. But the law seems clear that it's the idea here that people remotely have an opportunity to have in front of them any material that if they were coming to the council meeting, we would either hand them in presentation form or they'd be looking at it on a screen. So I'm going to stay in conjunction with the law. It will pose us a few challenges only because our meetings are on Monday. We try to put the agenda out on Thursday. Sometimes we slide to Friday, but that's all right. We'll back things up and adjust to that. So if council has anything, again, they want to present, also I'd ask we do our best to comply with presenting the information so that we can comply with the changes that I think we're going to continue to see as these remote meetings likely are going to continue as the pandemic increases. So I'll take the opportunity also as the members of the public are listening. Please understand also as relates to correspondence, if there's something you send in that you want council to see, that doesn't stop us from sending it to council, but stops us from presenting it publicly at the meeting. So Kathy will provide copies of correspondence that were received, and also does not stop someone from calling in and reading a letter, but the material is going to be presented. So we've looked at it forward and backward. There's a process in our program here where you can attach documents. I thought, well, again, for something like I'm doing tonight, or Andrea had a presentation as well on grants, a handout. I thought, well, if we attach that, so if somebody's watching from home, they can open it. But the law appears clear, 24 hours notice, which is the same as the agenda. So we're just going to do that. I mean, I think it'll make it better for all of you. Everything that you're going to see at the council meeting, you'll be assured there won't be anything that you'll get last minute. So some difficulty there, I suspect, but I think all to make sure that as this remote meeting process continues, that it's open and fair and transparent. So great. With that, Mayor, I'm going to step down and give it to Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Can I just ask a couple questions on that?
Could everyone attending remotely mute themselves until you have to talk, please? Good. Our next presentation will be made by Planning Board member Ryan Frary regarding Planning Board recommendations regarding cannabis regulations.
Yes, so I just wanted to introduce Ryan as a member of the Planning Board. Our chairman this evening, Tim Redmond, is unable to be here to present the recommendation due to a conflict with the Board of Education meeting. So I'm happy to represent Ryan, who volunteered to come and do this in his place. With your packets, you all received copies of the approved minutes from November and December, as well as the unapproved minutes from the most recent January 4th meeting, along with the language that the Planning Board is recommending. So Ryan is going to give a high-level overview, and we're happy to entertain any questions either following the presentation or at items for discussion, whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Thank you.
Thanks.
On behalf of the Ogdensburg Planning Board and the Chairman, Tim Redmond, I'm presenting recommendations regarding commercial cannabis activity, including the manufacture, cultivation, sale, and use of cannabis as in accordance with New York State statute. It may be easy to summarize these into the following sections. Location of commercial cannabis. Basically, location of all cannabis must adhere to New York State education law, which prohibits sales within 200 feet of religious institutions, 500 feet of educational facilities. Additionally, the Planning Board is recommending that greenhouses, which would be permitted in the business and industrial districts, be prohibited within 500 feet of single-family residential or moderate density residential zoning districts. No commercial cannabis activity within a single-family residential district adjacent to a single-family residential district or within 500 feet of a school district property. And then the hours, obviously the operation requirements, hours of public operation for Storefront would be Monday through Sunday, 8 to 10, while commercial cannabis locations like greenhouse would be open to the public Monday, 8 to 7 p.m. No products or depictions visible to the public from the exterior of the building. Some sort of sales and product tracking. Sales should be able to be tracked and logged, presented for review by the city. Some kind of odor control in place. Controls will be put in place regarding the odor if it becomes a public nuisance. On-site consumption. When consumption is allowable on premise for storefront dispensaries based on which zoning district they fall into. The other one would be obviously signage, limitations on cannabis signage and the illumination of signs, and then the licensing and permitting. Background checks for each owner, employee of the commercial cannabis business, or owner or employee of the commercial cannabis business performed by the chief of police and licensed by the city clerk office. Separate permits for greenhouse and storefront dispensaries. But these are only recommendations and should be reviewed before any measures are passed regarding permitting, signage, regulations, and full guidance from the New York State Office of Cannabis Management has not yet been released and will certainly dictate those measures.
So that was for commercial use, right?
Yeah,
Selling and things.
selling, manufacturing,
So
greenhouse.
the 500 foot from a residential or moderate density residential, is that New York State law or is that just another?
That's a recommendation from the plan. For single family residential, yes, because like they talked about the planning board meeting, that would put the Newell property out of contention if somebody were to want to use that for like a greenhouse or cultivation of some sort.
There's no public comment on that yet? I know that you guys offered it, but I didn't see it.
There was a public hearing, but there were no public comments.
Right, that's what I thought.
100%.
Okay.
That recommendation part of the state education law?
As far as single family,
Yes, as far as the distance between a religious or an educational,
that's education law, yeah.
that is state education law.
As far as the distance between what she was talking about, single family residential and like a commercial cultivation, that's a recommendation from the planning board.
From the planning.
And then how does it work with federally funded businesses like the Augsburg Housing Authority? How would that play into that?
There's no smoking allowed.
Right, so that would be how does that work?
As far as consumption goes,
No, as far as like location.
That would be outside of the planning board.
Okay,
We don't have a recommendation.
and there's no guidance yet from the state as far as those things go. Any further questions?
What about residential cultivation? Did you guys address that?
So I believe state law limitates, yeah, go ahead.
Just for like private use or whatever, because I think that's a part of this law.
Yeah.
It is. So that is all outlined in detail in the marijuana use, marijuana regulation and use taxation law. Adults can grow 2 plants per adult per household, no more than 6 plants per household. So what we're looking at is strictly regulations that would be in place at the local level to regulate time, place, and manner, which is all that a municipality that opts in to the sale and cultivation is able to regulate. Outside of that, we don't have the ability to regulate anything more than that. So we can tell you which zoning district that you can do, you can grow it in, which zoning district you can sell it in, which zoning district you can consume it in, whether or not you can consume it on public property or in public parks. But within your residence, that's regulated by the state of New York, which they do have guidance on. That's not part of this.
Okay.
So for a commercial standpoint, a residential unit, somebody growing their own, would you say 2 plants? Obviously they can't. I mean, I'm assuming that's for personal use or, they can't open up shop right?
That's correct. We didn't provide it as a handout this evening, although it has been provided as a handout in the past, which is a map that shows the city of Ogdensburg.
Yep.
And we identified the educational facilities as well as the religious institutions, and we had the appropriate buffers around them so you could see where if we did nothing, there would still be prohibitions in terms of where you'd be allowed to sell cannabis products.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I think from what Andrew and I read a couple days ago in an article that was published, I think we're likely looking at 2023 before any of this really starts to come in. I don't think they're going to be off the ground in 2022. There's a lot of emphasis on from the governor to push things along a little faster than they were going, but I think our planning board has gotten ahead of it, giving you the information to start to look at it and think through it, but I don't think we're at eminent decision point yet, and we'll certainly keep you informed how the process is moving along now that the governor has appointed the heads of the 2 groups that will work this through.
Our next presentation will be made by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith, regarding 2021 CFA and grant updates.
Thank you, Mayor. So this evening, I just wanted to take an opportunity. I think the city manager at our last meeting of the year mentioned that we'd provide you with an update on 2021 grant applications. So I did kind of prepare a report, but, and I'll make sure that it's provided to the city manager to share with the council and the public, but it unfortunately can't be shared this evening. In the fiscal year of 2021, we applied for 10 grants and we received 6 of those 10 grants. I'll just give a high-level overview of those grants now, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that y'all have. The presentation that I provided does provide some detailed timelines and next steps for each of the grants. but since we can't really show that, we'll just kind of go through it orally. So we did apply for CDBG funding in April of 2021. This was for housing rehabilitation here for city residents, income eligible city residents. We applied for $500,000 in conjunction with the Ogdensburg Land Bank, but that was not funded. We also applied for NBRC funding in May of 2021. This was for $1 million for the Main Street Pump Station that was awarded. We have until September 30th of 2024 to utilize those grant funds to complete the project, which is the rehabilitation of the Main Street Pump Station. Right now, to date, the only additional funds that we have received that's going towards the rehabilitation is about $170,000 of SAM Grant 19213, which is for water and sewer infrastructure, which leaves a gap of about $630,000. In June of 2021, we applied for Bridge New York funding for the Lafayette Spring Street Bridge. We requested just over $1.8 million, which includes roughly $250,000 for federal aid engineering overview and inspection. That would not be required if we did not use federal funds, which Bridge New York is. So we do anticipate that there's roughly $1.5 million worth of work to be done on the Spring Street Bridge that presently does not have any grant sources tied to it.
So we didn't get that grant.
We did not get the Bridge New York grant. We applied for 3 CFA grants in July of 2021. We applied for the Community Development Block Grant Preliminary Engineering Report. We applied for the maximum amount of $50,000, and this was funded. We do not have a contract for that funding yet. This was just announced in December. This is typically a 2-year granting period, and this would be to develop the engineering plans that are necessary to do a complete rehabilitation of East David Street between Patterson Street and Park Street. So our match on that is $3,000. And we are ineligible to apply for any additional grants for implementation until we have a completed preliminary engineering report. So this puts us in a great position to be able to apply for implementation funds following the completion of this preliminary engineering report. We applied for a water quality improvement program grant, the DEC's WQIP, again to supplement the wastewater treatment plant project with repairs to the Main Street Pump Station. This was a request of $720,000, and it was not funded. This announcement was made just prior to the Christmas holiday. So it's a new announcement. Unfortunately, we did not receive those funds. So again, the gap on that project right now is about $630,000. The last CFA that we submitted was through the Department of State, through the Brownfield Opportunity Area Program for environmental site assessments. This grant was funded. We received $293,291 to complete phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments on catalytic properties within our 330-acre BOA area. We also don't have a contract for this because this was just announced also in December, but we'll be working with the state, and the first step will be to put out a request for proposals or qualifications to work with a qualified engineering professional to do the actual phase 1 and phase 2s on those properties. We've identified in our grant 4 priority areas, which include the city-owned Jackson Street property, city-owned property within the Marina District, including 30 Main Street, which is actually 9 tax map parcels, the former Shade Roller site, and the right-of-way, which is just south of the property, as well as the Kiwanis and MCYC properties that are part of the former Augsbury Tank Barn. As separate from the CFAs, we did apply for a Downtown Revitalization Initiative grant, which is a request for $10 million, and that also was not funded. In our region, Tupper Lake received funding along with with Messina. So we will be working with the private property owners that were identified in the application to advance their plans, as well as identify supplementary funding in preparation for submitting in the next round of DRI funding. We also received funding through National Grid, which is apart from state or federal funding, more of a private grant, through their Brownfield Shovel Ready program to supplement the city funds to do the demolition of 212 Ford Street. We are eligible for 25% of project costs, and based on the estimates, we have an award letter for $117,430 for that project. We also received 2 financial restructuring board grants, one in the amount of $550,000 to cover the cost of fire department retirement incentives, and one in the amount of $950,000 to fund the replacement of a ladder truck for the fire department. In total, it's just under $3 million in awarded funds for grants that were written and awarded in 2021. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good job. Thank you.
Andrew, I missed the part about the Oxbury property.
Those 2 properties, 2 of the 3 were identified as properties to do environmental site assessment on, utilizing the environmental site assessment funds awarded through the Department of State grant.
Good. And we got that.
We did.
Excellent.
We received $293,000.
So that'll be a phase 2?
Yeah, it's actually considered phase 3. It's supplemental funding. Or supplemental site investigation that we anticipate having to do as part of cleanup efforts.
Good.
And the property owners of MCYC did provide the appropriate forms and authorization for their property to be included as well.
What's phase 3 consist of for the public?
Phase 2 and phase 3 both refer to actual testing of groundwater and soil samples, whatever is necessary.
Remediation studies.
Yeah, that go along with cleanup to help delineate the extent of contamination and or to confirm that all of the contaminants have been removed in accordance with a cleanup plan.
Thank you.
Mayor, if you permit, while Andrew is at the podium, it'd be a good time if you're good. I'd like to just give an update on where we are with the Quantas property, the old Logsbury properties in general. Just kind of let the council know we've had some activity, but it was all during that holiday period when we weren't meeting. So there has been some activity. So let me let Andrew just bring you up to speed on where we are today and where we're next.
Sure. So November 30th was the date that the city was able to officially conduct foreclosures. We probably could have conducted foreclosure on this property earlier, given that it is a vacant parcel. But we waited and we did them all at once. So that happened on November 30th. We are in a position to file the deed on the property in the center, which is the parcel owned by the Kiwanis site. We have not yet filed the deed on that, but we have, we do now, in the eyes of the state, have site control on that property. We have met with members of the DEC spills program on site. To Steve's point, we did that just before the holiday. 2 members of the DEC came up, met on site, walked the site, talked about the most recent reports, comprehensive reports, which date from 2014. The most recent report that they had reviewed prior to that meeting was from 2011. So we gave them a more updated report on that. It would be our intentions to work with the DEC and the Office of the New York State Comptroller to pursue cleanup under the navigational law, which allows the state to come in and can conduct cleanup, and then the state would be responsible for seeking reimbursement from any potentially responsible party. The state also, one of the requirements of participating in that is that the city would have to agree to provide up 50% of cleanup costs back to the state at the time that we sell the property, not to exceed what we would collect for it. So if we sold it for $100,000 and they spent $200,000 on cleanup, we would be responsible for reimbursing the state $50,000, 50% of the cost to sell the property. So, so that's kind of where we're at now. We are having conversations with the city attorney about drafting the agreement that we would have to have with the state in order to actually initiate the cleanup efforts on that property.
This is a very big step, very big step for the city.
The owners of the other two properties, so the east and the west of the corners, do we own that yet, or?
We do not. Both of those properties are current on their taxes.
Yeah, that makes,
I'm sorry, John, we are gonna, Andrea and I will be meeting with the parties of both. There's similar, same people of both parcels to the east and west. One individual that's part of one, not the other, but Andrea and I are gonna meet with all involved, let them know what the city's position is, what our plan is moving forward. And then, just see what their intent is. So our desire here is to make that entire stretch of land, whether it's city owned or private owned, ready for development. So anything we can do to help the private owners move along with theirs, we're gonna re-provide information that we have, make sure they have it, put them in contact with the DEC so they understand what their options will be. And I think we'll have another report from there once we meet with them. But this is for sure a big step for us. The city having control of a parcel there, gets us in there, gets it clean. We'll have DEC involvement, so if there are issues to the east and to the west, they will be assisting us or addressing those with the owners. So I think this is certainly a big step. Council, if you haven't been by there, you'll know we've cleaned our parcel off, so at least you can see what it looks like. The grass is mowed down tight. So we're going to talk to the adjacent owners about cleaning theirs up as well, just as soon as weather permits. So again, hopefully another big step in moving waterfront property.
The adjacent pieces of property on the side of each Kiwanis, have they partnered up?
So for the most part, Councilor, that specifics, for the most part, they are the same. The parcel to the east has one more owner than the same two. The parcel to the west.
So 2 out of the 3 are
both.
All right.
no, I'm really pleased to hear that and appreciate staff's effort in that regard. I know Steve Fisher feels very strongly about that site cleanup. A lot of people in the community do. So I appreciate that, and that's great to hear. Just for the public's information and my own, how many years does that type of project realistically take? I mean, rough estimates. I'm not gonna hold you to it or anything.
The state's words to us were that they would be in a position to move on this expeditiously should the city be able to produce the agreement that we would need to have between the city and the New York State Comptroller. Again, their words, not mine. This is a good time to get into this bills program because this bills program has sufficient funding in it for projects like this. So we're just kind of working through getting the legal representation to have that agreement drafted up.
Okay, thanks, Jan. No, this was one of our campaign pledges when we ran, and I know the other counselors want to see progress on that as well. And it's also part of our draft community development plan that's being prioritized now, I believe. So thank you very much.
One quick question on the pump station. We have until 2024. Was it 1 million you said?
Yep, from NBRC.
Till 12/24?
September 30th is 2024. Yep.
September 30th. Thank you. I recognizing the scope of work, I'm sure we can get that done in plenty of time before that, correct?
Yeah, we'll probably have a proposal council in the next couple of meetings. I think our plan here is to we've asked the engineer to we pulled this off, if you remember, as part of the wastewater treatment, we pulled them off. We just met with the engineer, excuse me, asked them to get this together for us, provide us an estimate what the engineer work will be to get it together. But I think our plan is to send it to the street get it out for bids, find out what the actual numbers are, and then bring it back to you and come up and give you a recommendation how we think we can fund it. And there's some money in the sewer fund. Wish we'd have gotten some more grant money, but $1 million on a project like this, we're at 55%. I don't know how much more we'll get. I don't know how much more competitive we'll be. Andy and I are going to dig in with the USDA. It's the only other place that I think we probably have a significant chance of getting more money in a timely fashion to do it. So we're gonna dig in with that and see if there's anything there. But we'll be bringing you something soon. This is, of all the pump stations, the one that Shane and Christian continue to warn us, like if this one goes down, it just has a lot of impacts. It's old. It's got parts that we can't get. So this year is likely the year to move on it. So I believe we'll have a recommendation fairly soon, since we can iron down some solid numbers for you.
We do have COVID money left, correct?
Yes, Councilor Reese, that's correct.
Because they just liberalize those as well, what's eligible and what's not eligible. So I think it already is eligible. How's the one with the psych center coming along? Is the state taking responsibility for that?
We're going to meet with them again. I think we had a couple conversations last year. They seem to understand that we're not likely going to rebuild it. It's also not it's not a system that's in dire need. It's something that needs to be on somebody's planning chart. It's not going to last forever, but it's in decent shape there for what it's handling. And we're gonna iron out something of them before the year is over, just so the agreement's clear. There's an old agreement in place, but I want to get it updated. But I don't really think there's an eminent issue there. Similar to the, I would call this small industrial park station. Am I saying that right?
There's a heavy industrial.
Yeah. And then there's the next one in line after Main Street is the South Water Street project. So we had a lengthy meeting and talked through all this the other day. I think our recommendation is going to stay. We're going to recommend to council action as soon as we can put all the tight numbers together on the Main Street stations.
Good job, Andrea. New year, new round of applications.
Yes, true. The period of downtime is quickly evaporating.
Andrea, do you know, are the new census data out for that impacts CDBG? Is that out yet?
They are not out yet. That level of micro data available for smaller communities like Ogdensburg are not yet available. I actually did send an email off last week to New York State Office of Homes and Community Renewal with a little screenshot of their mapping device, which they use to determine eligibility for CDBG community-wide, which would include infrastructure projects. We are still at 50%, and I did not receive a response in terms of when they have an estimated timeline for updating those numbers. So as of today, we are not eligible to apply for community-wide or what they call community benefit CDBG projects, which includes public infrastructure.
So we should be working toward target areas this year.
Yes, exactly. If we can define a target area and prove that 51% of the individuals within that target area are low to moderate income, then that would be determined eligible, and we could apply for funding for those types of projects, whether it's housing rehabilitation or infrastructure. And that is something that we're looking at doing as part of the East David Street project. We think it's a small enough area that if the numbers don't work, I don't know how you want to look at it, if it's to the city's benefit or not. I think obviously it's to our benefit if our population numbers in terms of overall income improve, but therefore we would remain ineligible. But if our numbers tick just under 50%, however you want to classify that, then we would become eligible for citywide projects. But under the assumption that we would not be at this time or for the next year or so, that is something we're looking at doing for the East David target area for that infrastructure project.
But you could, I mean, just off the top of my head, and I'm sure there's plenty of areas we could look at, but you know, the Main Street area there's an awful lot of activity. you know, a proposed hotel, a brewery, the Main Street pump station that we need money for, demolition and improvements of the cheese plant. So we might want to take a look at that too.
Absolutely. I think that we're going to be spending a little bit more time finding out who does the type of work, who could do the type of detailed income surveys that the city would need to provide to HCR, because again, it's a threshold criteria, so we would need to provide them with the information and they would have to review that to determine whether or not we would even be eligible to apply. So there's a little bit of legwork that the city needs to do, but it does sound as though the council is interested in investing funding to do that, which is great news, I think.
Yeah, yep, I'm all for that, whether it's Dank or some other private entity or the housing council. That's the way we always did it in the past. And I don't even know what the maximum is anymore. It used to be more generous, but is it over 500,000?
It depends on the type of, for housing, it's 500,000.
Comprehensive? Hopefully it's over $1 million, whatever it is. It used to be pretty high, but all right, thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. We have two public hearings tonight. The first is regarding the city's community development block grant imminent threat project entitled 2017 Flood Impact Improvements. I will open that to public hearing now. If you are attending remotely, would like to speak regarding the public hearing, please use the raise hand feature. You have 5 minutes.
The first individual is registered as Phil Clemens, and I will unmute that individual now. Mr. Clemens may have raised his hand in error because he immediately disappeared. Would you like me to move on, Mayor?
Yes.
The next individual is registered as Penny Sharrow, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted. It appears we can hear you now. Can you hear us?
Yes, I certainly can. Now, is this a general comment period like you normally have in the beginning of the meeting, or is this a specific area that we're supposed to be talking about?
Yeah, this is not, no, this is for public hearing. The other will come up later, Penny.
Personal
Okay,
appearance,
then
the next two public hearings, Penny.
okay, well, I have something I would like to speak on, and obviously this must not be at the time to do it. So,
No, just come on back.
thank you.
I do not see any other hands raised.
Okay. Our next is regarding a local law regarding proposed changes to the city charter to affirm the city's responsibility for enforcement of delinquent schools, city school district taxes. It's going to be bill number 1, and I will open that for public hearing now. If you are attending, use the raise hand feature. You have 5 minutes, please.
I do not see any hands raised.
I'll declare this closed. So this brings us to personal appearance. At this time, if anyone is attending remotely, please use the raise hand feature and address council, and you have 5 minutes.
The first individual is registered as Jennifer Stevenson, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted. Appears your line is open.
Thank you. I am reading a letter on behalf of a fellow citizen because I have similar safety concerns and safety fears. So on behalf of Ron Bouchard, here we are, a new year, but the same lingering mess here in Ogdensburg, with certainly more to come. Pretty much every important relationship the city has been damaged through insults, threats, lies, and finger pointing. Case in point, the Ogdensburg Firefighter Union. How can they possibly trust anything put forward by this administration? Their legally binding contract has been openly disregarded and their safety seriously compromised, while shamelessly projecting blame on them. A majority city councilor recently posted on Facebook in reference to providing adequate fire protection. Let's have a good conversation. And he asked, what is the best solution? The best solution came from conversations during contract negotiations in 2019. A total of 6 meetings took place to reach agreement on eliminating 4 positions, bringing the total down to 24 firefighters. At least 5 on duty has been in the contract since 2013 and was carried forward as it was mutually agreed to be safe and effective minimum. But this council majority decided to violate that agreement and wants the union to come up with a new solution, which is definitely not how collective bargaining works. 2 of the majority councilors have worked for the city in the past. Both were in bargaining units that came to a contractual agreement through negotiations. Did they believe then that the city could just arbitrarily decide to disregard their contract? And if enough damage hasn't been done to public safety, excuse me, the city manager unilaterally decided that as on January 9th, the fire department will operate with a minimum of 3 firefighters on duty. No legitimate safety-conscious fire chief would even consider running with 3 or even 4 firefighter minimum with no backup close by, especially in a city with structures so close together. This thoughtless and dangerous change came in an email with the line, as approved by the fire chief, with no garnered feedback or direction on how to operate. As a reminder, the city manager has never officially or provisionally been appointed to the civil service position of fire chief. He told the media about running with 3. The department will not send manpower inside unless it has at least 4 people on scene. So 3 essentially will watch the fire grow until help arrives. But to try to ease legitimate concerns about responding with 3, he said, if there's a life at risk, 2 can still enter. Think of that. They can, but once they do, excuse me, their lives are now at increased risk because there's no backup outside if they get in trouble. With only 3 firefighters responding initially and a total of only 16 on the department, safety and effectiveness is now seriously compromised. And with only 16, excuse me, what if even a small number of members test positive for COVID or are out with an injury or an illness or are simply unavailable to respond? The city manager is clearly jeopardizing the safety of citizens and firefighters and is now using it as a leverage to deal with the firefighters union. Excuse me. He wants them to give up hazard pay so we can add personnel, but adding personnel in itself ends hazard pay. For the record, the hazard pay clause has been in the contract since 2008, but none was ever paid out before this city manager's unsafe staffing cuts. To close, Watertown's fire chief just asked their city council to apply for the Cfa Grant to fund either 4, 5, or 7 new firefighters. They have a minimum of 15 on duty. The application period closes on February 4th. What do you suppose will happen here? The Ogdensburg Fire Department has been severely disabled by an unqualified city manager who doesn't care enough to live here and who simply gave himself the title of fire chief. Time will tell how serious these consequences will be. Ron Bouchard, Ogdensburg. Thank you.
The next individual is registered as Michael Tooley, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears your line is open, sir.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Michael Tooley. I live at 214 Hamilton Street in Ogdensburg. I appreciate the opportunity to address City Council this evening. My question to Council is one I stated in my last letter to the editor in local newspapers. Based on the press release regarding county property tax collection from the city manager that was posted at the city's website on December 28th, is it the official position of the city of Ogdensburg that I am a self-proclaimed expert who issues baseless opinion letters on issues impacting city residents? Thank you.
The next individual is registered as Penny Sharrow, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears your line is open.
First, I would like to say to Mr. Reich, from what I hear, we have lost you or losing you as deputy mayor. Hopefully you were aware of this was going to happen, or maybe it was planned. I have no idea. You seem willing to listen at times and perhaps be a voice of reason when you did listen to the people. Thank you for your service. Secondly, I would like to address the mayor. Mr. Skelly, I have never addressed you in a derogatory manner personally, nor interjected anything into or about your personal life. I was a little surprised, to say the least, when one of my former students informed me that they had been contacted through social media and asked by you to stop posting positive remarks about me and the positivity of having been on one of my teams. I would like to right now publicly ask you to stay out of my personal life and realize you are not in this position to give directives to people you don't even know. This is not an aristocracy. You are not king. We are not subservient to you. You are mayor. You work for us, supposedly. I tolerate your name calling of me, or if it's by your standards, it's just laughable. On another note, in regards to my concern about the city manager not residing in the city, I was under the impression that it meant that he would buy a home, pay taxes, and invest in the city. I understand now that he does rent a place somewhere in the city when he's not working from Tupper. You said on social media he felt unsafe here because of some of the citizens are thugs here at Ogdensburg. So he decided not to live here. To me, it sounds like he should have beefed up our police force as requested instead of cutting it if he feels unsafe. What about the citizens' safety too, if that's a real concern? In regards to the fire department and cutting to 3 men, a shift because they won't kowtow to his demands, put it out to the citizens. Let us vote on it. Or are you afraid it will backfire like November? 3 men on a shift having to wait for mutual aid to show up to enter a building is ludicrous and totally unsafe. And if I'm not mistaken, in violation of OSHA standards approved by New York State. All volunteer fire departments are highly respected organizations. Why would you put their districts in jeopardy to allow ours to perform their duties adequately? There are a few perks in the city manager's contract which allow him for a lot of flexibility in his $100,000 plus job. Working from home. I understand the pandemic regulations and restrictions, but are there any regulations or guidelines, as most contracts would call for, because it all appears to be at his own discretion when he chooses to work from home? Who is he accountable to for his time spent here doing his job or elsewhere? It would be nice for the citizens that pay him to know if anybody has a handle on this whole thing and make sure it's reasonable. A little transparency in regards to some of these deals that are being made from our elected officials would be nice. You work for us. Thank you for some of the accomplishments you have done. And on a positive note, thank you for allowing me to speak. Good night.
I just want to say, our city manager puts in hours, days, nights, weekends. I've worked with him a lot on issues, and he makes himself available all the time on city issues. Next, please.
The next individual is registered as Valerie Sovey, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted. Mrs. Sovey, it appears you are self-muted. Would you like me to move on, Mayor, and circle back?
Yes, please.
The next individual is registered as Jason Bouchard, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted, sir. Mr. Bouchard? The next individual is registered as Valerie Sovey, and I will unmute that individual now. The next individual is registered as James Slevin, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted.
Yes, good evening. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. While I'm not a resident of Ogdensburg, I am a resident of New York State. and I represent the firefighters of Ogdensburg as their district vice president at the International Association of Firefighters. Now, it's baffling that we're looking at staffing cuts in this day and age that have already taken place in Ogdensburg, and now there is a plan in place for additional staffing cuts because there's a belief that the surrounding communities, the volunteers, would be able to supplement that fire protection in the city of Ogdensburg. And there may even be a plan to perhaps recruit volunteers for Ogdensburg. But if you talk to anybody that's involved with the fire service in New York State, you will see that the volunteers have a real challenge right now, and it's recruitment. They simply do not have the ability to get the members that they used to get. And in fact, more and more departments are moving in the other direction and looking to hire full-time firefighters to ensure that there's a guaranteed response in the community that they serve. Now, unfortunately, in the town I live in, Long Island, we used to have paid firefighters, and there was a very short-sighted decision to cut the firefighters on the belief that the volunteers could respond and be there. Tragically, this past spring, 3 residents in my town were killed because there was a significant delay in getting to the fire by the volunteers, as well as a significant delay of over 20 minutes in getting water on that fire. It's probable that they would have had a better chance of survival if we had the full-time paid firefighters in town to respond, because there was always a guaranteed response. Now, you won't talk to a credible fire expert in this country that says staffing cuts are a good idea. Right now, the federal government is bending over backwards to provide Cfa Grants for fire departments around the country to supplement their staffing and retention. At our office, at the International Association of Firefighters, we have grant experts that will provide free service to the city of Ogdensburg to review those grants. I understand the grant was put in by the city of Ogdensburg, but it was a very feeble attempt, poorly written, and the goal was not to get the grant. Now, we shouldn't even be talking about staffing cuts here, because this is not a fiscal issue. There were tax cuts that take place, and everybody loves tax cuts. I'm not arguing against tax cuts, but you cannot have tax cuts when you're going to jeopardize public safety. We have to look out for the residents of Ogdensburg. And yes, I am advocating on behalf of my members, but when my members are safe, that means the city of Ogdensburg, the residents of Ogdensburg are safe. And that is our goal here. We will go above and beyond to protect the citizens of Ogdensburg, and we will not allow these staff cuts to take place. Now, we represent over 325,000 firefighters across the U.S. and Canada, and this is not just the city of Ogdensburg firefighters that are in this fight currently. We have their back, and we will provide them every single resource available of the IFF, whether that is in court, which we have already been. We will continue to have their back financially. We will continue to have their back, and we will continue to have the city of Ogdensburg back by showing you what a adequate fire protection is and how you can keep the residents safe. We cannot rely on a backup volunteer service that may or may not be there. So I'm asking you, before this decision gets decided upon, before you move forward, put the residents of Ogdensburg first. Make sure that you maintain adequate fire protection. Under current OSHA standards, what their current staffing level is, they are not able to adequately respond. And certainly, if you are going to cut the staffing down to 3 members, it is impossible to maintain an OSHA standard and for them to be safe, and for the city of Ogdensburg residents to be safe in firefighting. I bring over 26 years of experience as a New York City firefighter. I've seen firsthand what tragedies happen when there is a delay in response, and I do not want to see that happen in the city of Ogdensburg. I'm asking every resident to speak up, every member of this council, to make sure you make the right decision. Put the residents' public safety first, not on a short-sighted decision in regards to a budget, not trying to force the firefighters union to negotiate with a gun to their head. There was a fair agreement reached, and that runs through 2025, and we are going to make sure that we have their back to see that that agreement is enforced. So I want to once again say thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. I want to make sure everybody continues to stay safe in the city of Ogdensburg. Do not make any short-sighted decisions. Speak to the fire experts around the country. And that's not listening to someone who is certainly conflicted, has no vested interest in the city of Ogdensburg. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Who's next, Kathy?
The next individual is registered as Doug Loffler, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted, sir. Mr. Loffler, it appears you are self-muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, just a quick concern here. At the last meeting, there was considerable discussion concerning the SRO officer between the city and the Ogdensburg City School District. And I know the city manager made the comment that he was going to contact the superintendent and sit down to see if an agreement or something could be worked out so our school district could have an SRO officer. I'm just concerned, has that meeting taken place yet? And what is the status of that position as per the city? It's a very important position, and I'd like to at least have somebody give me a little answer if we're working on it, if there's a meeting has been held, and what the status is. Thank you.
The next individual is registered as Mr. Disruptor, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted. Appears your line is open.
Good evening, it's Mr. Disruptor here. That's what I'm noted as online, so I figured it was only appropriate to use that name on here as well. The city manager started out by saying the governor wants transparency. Stuff needs to be put out to the people before the meeting. Today I took a tour of the city website. Public update, still empty. Most of the city website, still empty. Unless you're on a town hall page run by an outside city resident, and you don't get the information. And on top of that, we got spokesman John Lovely, who's putting out all the information under fake names. If you're going to be honest with the people as a city manager, start putting it out on the city website under public updates, not on a website that you just feel like spewing out your information that's pretty much false. Mr. Mayor, you've always wanted solutions. The other day, thank you for posting all your county tax bills. It looks like you're doing pretty well financially and business-wise, which congratulations. One recommendation, you were wondering how you're going to pay those county bills. Maybe you could raise the rent on the city manager, and that would help you pay your bill on that one. We're talking about
Disconnect him.
He's not talking any city matters. He's talking just foolishness. Next one.
The next individual is registered as Valerie Sobey. Although she has her hand raised, it appears she has lost her audio connection. So I'll move on to the next. The next individual is registered as Maureen Brashaw, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted. Appears your line is open.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. Good evening, everybody. This is Maureen Brashaw. I would like to comment on the record that I am absolutely not in favor of any of the cuts to our police department or fire department. Most recently, the change to a three-man per shift on our fire department. We all know how unsafe this is, especially with yet another COVID surge. Despite the desperate reassurances of the fire chief / city manager, and I don't approve of myself or any citizen's welfare being used for collateral in the never-ending games of this regime and the city manager. There were over 500 calls last year, 911 calls, that our responders, our fire department, had to stand by at Mr. Jelly's direction, and they could not help. They could not use their own capacity and their training. Absolutely, this is outrageous. So far this year, as of yesterday, 29 people in the city called 911 and had to wait for the rescue squad to respond when available, while we have trained EMTs standing by on Mr. Jelly's direction. Somebody calls in, has trouble breathing or whatever, they have to wait for whatever time instead of having somebody go there immediately, as we had in the past. This is a genuine problem that needs to be addressed immediately, and I implore council to do the same this evening. The people voted in November for our first responders to be treated fairly and with respect, for their well-being and the well-being and safety of our community to be taken seriously. Again, the people voted, and you all need to listen. So for the record, the voters demand that you all honor the legal and binding contracts of the fire department and the police department. I don't know why there's feedback on here. There shouldn't be, because I'm alone. Are you guys getting feedback?
We're not now.
Okay, well, there shouldn't be any feedback, so hopefully somebody else isn't putting it in there. At any rate, I do not approve of taxpayer funds being used to defend this regime and their legal activities regarding these contracts or any other legal activity that we are currently paying exorbitant attorney fees for. This needs to end, and now. You're wasting our money, yet crying poor out of the other side of your mouth. We know there's a 28% fund balance currently, and the payroll savings over the past 2 years for first responder personnel that have retired. I believe that number is over 1.5 million by the numbers that I have seen, although that may not be entirely accurate. This is not about money, never has been, and I'm pretty sure it's obvious by now. As I said, the November vote told you how obvious that was. Honor our votes. Bottom line, stop wasting our money frivolously on some personal vendetta mission and honor the legal and binding contracts of our first responders. The citizens demand that you apply for the Cfa Grant to staff our paid fire department. Some of you definitely will not be here in 3 years, so you really do not need to worry about what will be done at that time. But for now, apply for the Cfa Grant before the deadline of February 5th. As previously stated, there are many resources out there to get the most out of this grant. And I would also like to ask, when is the city manager going to get some skin in the game and actually live here and own property here? He needs to be here. And unless there is some legal reason why he cannot own property here or whatever, he should be living here. And that's about it. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
The next individual is registered as Joe Sobey, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears your line is open, sir. Mr. Sobey, it appears you are now self-muted.
Can you hear me, Kathy?
Yes, we can hear you. It appears you've self-muted again. Mrs. Sobey, it appears you have hit the self-mute button again. We can't hear you. Do you want me to move on, Mayor, and circle back?
Please. Yep.
The next individual is registered as Valerie Sobey, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears your line is self-muted. The next individual is registered as Joe Sobey. It appears your line is open now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm not sure how much you heard before of what I said, so I will thank the council again for the opportunity to address you this evening. I'm going to express my concern regarding oversight of the Ogdensburg Fire Department.
Hey, Val, just one second. Val,
There's
a lot of feedback, Val. Do you have any devices near the one you're speaking on, because it's echoing in the city council chambers and I can't understand you?
I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes, much. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Again, calling to express my concern regarding oversight of the Ogdensburg Fire Department. I recently read a press release posted on the city's website by the city manager and acting fire chief dated January 7th, 2022, titled Ogdensburg Fire Department minimum daily staffing reduced to 3 after IAFF Local 1799 refuses to negotiate a reduction in perks and hazard pay. The title of this press release clearly reveals the true intent in the reduction of minimum daily staffing, which appears to be motivated less by budgetary concerns and more so by the desire of this administration to take punitive and retaliatory action toward the members of the fire department for their unwavering commitment to maintaining the high level of service and public safety outlined in their contract, as citizens and taxpayers of the city both need and deserve. With numerous changes in staffing and operating procedures ongoing in the department, it's little wonder that members of the fire department believe that the city is not capable of negotiating in good faith. The press release states that The city would like to see daily minimum staffing set at 4 personnel. In fact, OFD Local 1799 City Hall and DPW employees represented by CSEA and the OED have all separately and successfully reached binding contractual agreements with the city that are currently in effect. These agreements were collectively negotiated in good faith. The current administration's dissatisfaction with these binding agreements does not negate the city's obligation under law to abide by the terms of the contract. The Taylor Law defines the term agreement as the result of an exchange of mutual promises between a public employer and an employee organization, which becomes a
Val, it's Kathy. Val, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's Kathy. The audio on this end is completely inaudible. I'm wondering if you have a Wi-Fi connection or a hardline connection and what type of device you're using, because we literally cannot make out every fifth or sixth word.
I am using my home computer, same Wi-Fi that I always have.
Is it a Wi-Fi connection?
It is.
And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we have a solid connection because you're cutting in and out and you're extremely muffled. I'm sorry, but you're welcome to continue. I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Oh, okay. I'll try to maybe lean closer to the mic and see if that helps.
Maybe you should try to
Minimum staffing, overtime pay, and hazard pay are contractual obligations that the city has already agreed to provide, and it is disingenuous and misleading to imply that fire protection for our community costs too much, when operating costs have increased drastically as a direct result of the slash and burn approach being used to reduce staffing. Yes.
I'm sorry. Is there any chance you can just dial in on the phone without trying to use the computer device? I think the audio would improve significantly.
I can try. Can you give me the number?
It's posted on the agenda. If you pull up the agenda, the hyperlink is there but it also shows the phone only connection. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it's just completely inaudible.
It'll take us about 30 seconds to get back to the page.
Okay, why don't I do this? There's more people waiting in line, and I'll move on with the mayor's permission, and then we'll circle back. Thank you. The next individual with a hand raised is registered as Ann Loffler, although it does not appear there's an audio connection.
Hello?
Yep, Mrs. Loffler, can you hear us?
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear me? You can talk. We can hear you. It appears now, Mrs. Loeffler, that you are self-muted.
Is that better?
That is better, please.
Thank you. I want to address the cuts to the fire department. What in God's name are you guys thinking? 3 men on a shift? What if there's a fire? Okay, you've got to wait for mutual aid. What if a child is in that house? What if an elderly person's in that house? What are we going to do? Let them die? Waiting for someone to get here? You guys have got to be kidding me. What is wrong with you? You're all residents other than Mr. Jelly. Don't you care about the people in this town? Anybody that backs this on this council, you should be ashamed of yourself. What if it's one of your family? Mike, you often say everything your grandchildren have gone through because of people here in town. What if it's one of your grandkids in that house, Mike? I've got 5 grandkids. 5, 6, 9, 14, and 15. And pray to God that nothing happens to one of my grandchildren. Because I will move heaven and earth to make sure everyone who backed this ridiculous, uncalled for, stupid action is held legally responsible. I may not be able to go after you criminally, but I will civilly. This is ridiculous. People are going to die, and nobody cares. Like I said on WWNY's site, Mr. Jelly, you don't care. And you came back and accused me of sitting on the couch. Obviously, you don't know me. I volunteer my time every day to help elderly, young, get the medical appointments. So before you go trash talk me on public media, know what you're talking about. Pray to God nothing happens to my family. Pray to God. What are you thinking? We voted you in here. We voted you in to make sure we were safe. And Mike, you lied. You lied. Mike, Steve, John, Bill, you lied. Right through your teeth. Be proud. Be proud. Because you know something? If somebody dies in one of those fires, you 5 people are going to have blood on your hands. And I hope you can live with it. Thank you.
The next individual is registered as Brenda Hill, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening. This is Brenda Hill, AKA Dark Cloud, Mr. Skelly. Do you remember me? I'm the one that you took off Facebook because you didn't like my negative comments. Got a few tonight for you. Don't agree at all with you taking, with the city manager only having 3 firemen on. Hell no. No, that's not right at all. Let's cut it down to 3 people on your team. Let's cut it down to 3 people on your team when your house is on fire. Mutual aid. If we have mutual aid in Ogdensburg, we get a fire and we call for mutual aid. What if, say, there's a fire in Hubleton? Are we going to be called for mutual aid? How can we be? We've only got 3. That would leave us nothing. Now, if they're going to help us, shouldn't we help them? I don't understand. And as far as the disruptor, when he called, he should have been given his 5 minutes like anybody else. But just because he was saying negative things that you don't like, you don't want him to talk any longer. I think you're very unfair. I think there's very few people, there's 3 people on that council right now that I give a pat on the back to. But I'll tell you what, Mr. Kelly, you're not one of them. And Mr. Jelly, you're not one either. Why don't you man up, buy a house in Ogdensburg, pay taxes, and be here when you're needed? Thank you very much. Have a good night.
The next individual is registered as Joe Sovey, and I will unmute that individual now. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Kathy?
I can, but you're a million miles away, Val. You can give it a try, though.
Is that any better?
No, there's a device near you somewhere. I don't know if it's a cell phone, an iPad. We're getting feedback, and when the minute you talk, it starts toning everything out that you're trying to say.
Okay, hang on just 1 second.
Val, it appears you're self-muted now.
Okay, Kathy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. If you pull the device further away from your mouth and talk slower, it might come through.
I think what I'm gonna try to do, if it's okay, is I will just, is it possible that I can email the comments that I wanted to read and that they could be attached to the minutes? This is very frustrating. It would be much easier if we could attend meetings in person and avoid these kinds of things, but unfortunately, we just appear to be having some technical difficulties. Can I email you what I would like to say?
Val, if you email it to me, I'll read it into the minutes for you. It's Nicole. So if you send it over to me ASAP,
Kathy, I can't
I'll
hear
read
you
it.
at all if you're answering me.
Val, it's Kathy. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. Counselor Kennedy said if you email your statement to her, she would be happy to read it in to the minutes for you right now.
I would much appreciate that. Thank you.
If you can just confirm to me once it's been sent, and then I'll mute your line so that Counselor Kennedy can read it.
Okay, can you give me her email address, please?
It's nkennedy@ogdensburg.org.
Is there anyone else after this?
There's not.
Last?
Yes, sir.
Want them to do it during, we'll move on, and let them do it on,
That's been sent now, Kathy.
All right, thank you so much. So it's been sent. So I have muted her so that you.
All right, it's loading right now.
Okay.
All right. On behalf of Valerie Sovey, first, I would like to say I'm disappointed that no follow-up action has been taken by council with regard to enforcement of the city's social media and internet use policy as requested by several citizens at the October 12th, 2021 council meeting. Almost daily, social media and our city's website continue to be used by current city administrators to create conflict in our city. This abuse of city resources has now expanded to include county legislators, law enforcement agencies, and an ever-growing number of private citizens who are continually being attacked for any views that differ from the agenda of the self-proclaimed Skelly administration. I personally experienced this on October 13th, just hours after my last call into a city council meeting when the city manager named me specifically in a social media post. This diverse and divisive and disrespectful behavior from elected officials and from city employees under the direct supervision of this council is unacceptable. Our citizens deserve better. I'd like to renew my request that council meet as a body in executive session if needed to review the city's current social media and internet use policies as per the city charter and reach a consensus as to what action will be taken to address violations in these policies. I'd also like to say that if anyone is inclined to dismiss my comments tonight as a so-called government disruptor, please think again. I have always been and continue to be grateful for my husband's opportunity to serve as an employee of the city of Ogdensburg for the last 21 years. Unfortunately, the stress that all city employees face, and I do not refer to only firefighters, has increased greatly as workforces are downsized and all departments are forced to do more with less in terms of both manpower and financial resources. As far as the fire service specifically is concerned, I will say that it is heartbreaking to see the added stress and the daily struggle of these men as they try to adjust to the ever-changing reality of their jobs and the unavoidable reality that administrative changes will not allow them to provide the same level of service that they have in the past, forcing you as citizens to expect less from your fire department. The changes this administration is making in our city departments will have repercussions long past the time when they are gone from their offices. Meanwhile, first responders and other city employees want nothing more than to serve their community well, honor the contracts they have signed, and uphold the oaths that they have taken in service to their community. Thank you for listening. Like many others in Ogdensburg, we are part of a generation that believes there is no shame in having more than one job, working with your hands, and having more than one income to support your family, and working for what you want in life. We have worked hard and continue to pursue our dreams, having chosen to stay in Ogdensburg rather than relocate outside of the city because our family, friends, and jobs are here. They are fighting City Hall because they do not agree with the policy changes that force them to wait to respond to a call when someone is injured and in pain, or changes that will inevitably increase the amount of time needed to get a fully functioning crew to the scene of a structure fire. That is the end.
Okay.
There is one more hand that has since gone up, Mayor, if you'd like me to. The next individual is, and it just disappeared. So I guess we'll continue.
Okay, we have appointments tonight. I make a motion to appoint Rick Pyrie and Mary Louise Marquette.
Missed a couple issues in the correspondence.
Oh, I moved over a page too soon. It was so long in the other. Okay. Do we have any correspondence?
We do not.
Okay. Now we have our consent agenda. That the claims as enumerated in general fund warrant number 1-2022 in the amount of $3,203,753.23, and library warrant number 1-2022 in the amount of $9,323.83, and capital fund warrant number 1-2022 in the amount of $1,234,169.40, and community development fund warrant number 1-2022 in the amount of $75.98, and community renewal fund warrant number 1-2022 in the amount of $0 as audited be, and the same hereby are ordered paid. I so move.
I'll second it.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Skelly,
Yes?
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reish,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
approved.
I make a motion to appoint Rick Pyrie and Mary Louise Marquette, and to 3-year terms on the Tree Commission, terms to begin January 10th, 2022, and then December 31st, 2024. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reish,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
approved.
And this brings us to items for council action. Our first item of business will be read by City Manager Stephen Jelly.
A local law providing for changes in the Ogdensburg City Charter to affirm the city's responsibility for the enforcement of delinquent city school district taxes.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Just, I'm sorry.
Right.
Bill seconded.
Yes.
We have pending litigation from the school.
Excuse me, the school has attached itself to the lawsuit filed by the county. The passing of this tonight, I believe, will satisfy the school district's legal counsel, and they will withdraw themselves from the action.
We have that from the school.
We do, and this change is also in the judge's order dismissing the case. The expectation is we'd pass this and stipulate it with school district's counsel.
Aren't the lawsuits a little different?
What's that?
Compared from the county to the school district, aren't they a little different?
School district didn't file a lawsuit. They just attached. They did not formally file. The judge asked for our concurrence to allow them to verbally ask for this change, and we affirmed to the judge that we would provide such.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
No.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
approved.
I will read the next item of business, resolution appointing a deputy mayor for 2022 and 2023. Whereas the City of Augsburg Charter provides that a deputy mayor is to be elected from the city council members at the first council meeting in January of even-numbered years. Now therefore be it resolved that Councilor Stephen Fisher is hereby elected deputy mayor of the Augsburg City Council for 2022 and 2023. I so move.
I'll second it.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
No.
Counselor Powers,
No.
Counselor Reese,
Yeah. Yeah, Steve and I had a conversation a couple of years ago and I indicated to him that I thought he should have the position after 2 years. It's a 2-year term and I think he'll do a good job and I support him. Man of my word, Steve.
Thank you, John.
Counselor Scamperly,
No.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
approved.
Congratulations, Steve. I know you'll do a good job as John did before, and with the largest number of votes for a city councilor that maybe ever, yeah, you deserve it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Our next item of business will be read by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith.
So resolution authorizing the city assessor authority to grant exemptions on the 2022 city assessment rule in accordance with Executive Order 11.1. Would you like me to read the whole thing?
No, basically, it's just to help people that they won't have to renew this right now. Is that correct?
So I'll move that.
Give them time.
Maybe a second.
I'll give it a second and then we'll have some, if explanation would be fantastic.
I'll second it. Unless somebody else did.
I did, but you can second it too,
Cool.
Mike.
Yes.
Yeah, so our city assessor is here this evening, and I think you're off on the right track, Mayor, but I'll let the city assessor, Mark, speak to this directly.
Thank you.
I am Mark Schroeder. And the resolution, first off, the resolution was around last year also. I did not come before you to have you pass it because I'd already sent renewal notices out. So this year I am holding off on sending renewal notices out. I have them printed on my desk. But it just makes it so much easier with the COVID that
yes,
seniors and those that are disabled with limited incomes don't have to come in and renew something. It just makes it so much easier. So I think you did pass it. So thank you for doing that. Oh, you have it? Yeah. Okay. Do you have any questions?
I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm glad to see it. It's, COVID's tough, especially, a lot of people that don't want to, go out in public. And,
That's very true. My office, I very rarely see people coming into my office.
Yeah.
It's usually a phone call these days.
It's nice to meet you. What's your name?
Mark Schnorr.
Schnorr.
Yep. I live on Black Lake.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mark. I'm so glad you did this, and now we'll vote on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith. You're working a lot tonight.
This is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Bar Associates LLC for the citywide reassessment project.
I'll move that.
So in summary, this is the citywide reevaluation that we've been talking about through the budget process. We did budget for this expense of $275,000. We did an RFP to seeking proposals. We did get two proposals.
Excuse me, Andrea. Could everyone mute? There's a lot of background noise. Thank you.
We did get two proposals, and this is the lowest proposal. It's also, GAR has been very responsive to the questions of the city, so we feel very confident in recommending this to council. This would not impact the assessment role in the city until, so it would impact the city school taxes in September of 23 and the following year, the city taxes in 2024. So this is a lengthy process, but we do believe it is the correct process and really the only process that would allow us to reevaluate the entire city at one time. If you have more detailed questions about what the process involves, I'm happy to, again, ask the assessor to come up and speak to it directly.
I'm all for it. I think this is a great approach. It should be very fair, covering the whole city. Everybody goes up, and I hope we're in a place that, as the assessments go up, that we will counter it with a lower tax rate to not burden people, and that should help keep property values going up in the future. Anyone else?
I'm just wondering what our present policy is. I mean, I don't know that there's a local law or anything that governs how often we were doing assessments before. We were doing them every year, a third, and a third of the city. We haven't done any in the past 2 years, so this will be really 4 years before this goes into effect, and we probably should have a local law, I think, if we're going to do a citywide reval like this, that, it's every 5 or 7 years, and something we ought to be thinking about.
I think once we do it once, we're probably good for 40 years. I mean, we talked about this before during budget time, and I think it just, sometimes it gets away from the assessor and different neighborhoods and whatnot. Exactly what John just said. I think that was John speaking. And I think it would be costly, not a whole lot of reason to do it that soon. So
we're having a lot of background noise.
Just to kind of keep up with things. I think once it's done, that's what people in the city call for a long time, is a citywide reval. And I see the logic in doing it now. I don't see the logic in doing it every 5 years. That's what an assessor's for, to kind of maintain pace. So I think 50 years or so, it gets away from the assessor, and it needs to be done. And that's what we're doing. So myself, I respectfully disagree with that.
I think if you look at, again, as Councilor Scampley just said, I think if you just, it's somewhat situational. I don't know that you'll necessarily need to do this in an interval, but depending on what property values do. So if you look at your property value history, let's say the last 10 years, you were relatively flat. Let's say maybe the last 15 years, it was relatively flat. So you're going neighborhood by neighborhood. You're doing this neighborhood, you're doing that neighborhood. Some properties get looked at. They're doing improvements. There's different philosophies, etc. But I think getting this flat line will get everybody, everything equalized. And then you just take a look what goes on from there. It's not that I think that the system that they used to use won't work. If you go through a period of nominal increases in property values or steady increases, that the assessor is able to keep up with that. Maybe hire some part-time staff, etc. I think there's a lot of approaches, but I think a lot of it's going to be situational based on what goes on. And so now you've gone through this period of a lot of flat property values, the assessments that went up or people that did improvements, but then immediately followed by a fairly quick spike in property values in a reasonably short period of time. That just compounded matters. So I think talking about this for a little while, but I think the recent spike in property sales. So as much as spike in property, I mean, you've seen the sales pretty extensive. So there's good data there. So I think for someone like this coming in here, I think it's also going to be an opportune time for them because they'll have pretty recent data in which to substantiate their findings with. One thing I just want to say loud and clear to the council and everybody listening is, again, while this is a couple years off from impacting property values, the intent here is to equally assess the city so that we establish the most fair and equitable means to have property valued, and then council can take a look at the levy as from a holistic perspective. If you do the neighborhoods and you're trying to look at increasing or decreasing your tax rate, you're impacting the people that have most recently been assessed, and those changes could be drastic. This is going to allow council to look at that and then adjust the tax rate, or at least to consider what the tax levy was, adjust your tax rate, likely down, significantly down if property values are up. So I think it's a time for people to hopefully understand that we're trying to move away from what has been kind of the historic North Country, tradition in this, which is, be careful what you do to your property, et cetera, you'll pay more taxes, your property value goes up. So I think this is intended to just establish the baseline. I think it would be council's intention surely to, reduce the tax rate, at least from a planning and discussion perspective during the next budget that it impacts to that would be the zero baseline, and then go from there. I do ask council to consider as we're moving forward, because while 2024 city taxes are 2 years away, that seems like a long time. It'll be on us before we know it. And the first taxes that will be impacted by this will be the 2023 school taxes. And I don't believe there's any way this council can sit silent and not have communication with the school board about ensuring that they don't just follow those additional assessments up without adjusting the tax rate as well. The school tax rate is high. This assessment by this agency will likely not have people's property values going down. So we need to be communicating with the school board on what's going to happen, the timing, and ask that they take full consideration not to take advantage of the natural increase in property.
Great. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reish,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yep.
Approved.
Our next item of business will be read by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith, again.
This is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Paradigm Environmental LLC per request for proposals number 2021-005.
I'll second that. You got it.
So this is a request to conduct asbestos surveys at property primarily that was acquired at the November 30th foreclosure. So these are all properties now that the city holds title to, with the notable exception of three. 1000 Jefferson Avenue, which is a field house for one of our parks. It's in very, very poor condition and something that really needs demolition. If it is negative for asbestos, that's something that our public works department would be able to do. So it could be a considerable cost savings. Can't do that until we have an asbestos survey. The other notable difference is Mechanic Street, 720 Mechanic Street. This is the Oswegatchie Pump House. Really, in order for us to do any substantial reuse planning or feasibility studies here, we need to know how much asbestos we're dealing with and where it is, so that we can have a plan in place for abating it. I would anticipate that a building of this age and nature does have some degree of asbestos. So again, this is sort of forward thinking. With regard to the other properties, asbestos surveys would be required before any demolition can be done, whether it's owned by the city or a private individual. We think that this helps any potential future buyer in terms of complying with orders to demolish and ensuring that they're done properly in accordance with New York State laws, specifically Code Rule 56. So for that reason, we're recommending all of these structures have the asbestos surveys done, and that this is something we can do now over the winter in anticipation for spring demolition projects or rehab.
No, that's very good. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Just a quick question. The resolution calls for surveys.
They're called asbestos surveys.
Is that what, so just through abatement processes? I mean, we're going to go forward with it, right? All right.
Yeah, they're referred to as asbestos surveys and or hazardous building material surveys, where they will go and conduct actual testing of material, collect samples, they're sent out to a lab, and then we get a report for each property that identifies whether or not the material tested positive or negative for asbestos and the percentage of asbestos. If it's less than 1% asbestos containing, it doesn't require abatement.
Right. Okay. These are fair estimates. We don't expect any.
These are really good estimates. We do a lot of these through the land bank. These are very good prices, which is why I made the recommendation to do more than we initially put out in the RFP. We got good pricing from both firms, but this is the lower cost firm for not only the surveys, but also for any air monitoring that we would do as part of an abatement project.
Anybody move this yet?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Who's seconding it?
One moment. It was moved by Counselor Scamperly and seconded by Mayor Skelly.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Reach,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
approved.
That was a good move, staying there. Our next item of business will be read by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith.
I think this is my last one. A resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a 2022 Northern New York Community Foundation grant. I'm happy to read through this if you'd like.
No, it's
Just give us an overview.
buying kayaks, right?
So this is an application that our.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but someone really
I'll
should
move it.
move it and second it
I'll move
before they discuss it. I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Thank you. This is an application that our recreation director is putting together through the Northern New York Community Foundation. These are typically small grants. In total, there's only $20,000 to be awarded out among St. Lawrence and Jefferson counties. So the recreation director and myself have reviewed it. We're looking at applying for up to $2,500 specifically for the purchase of kayaks and life vests to support a new camp as part of our summer camp offerings geared towards teens and young adults, which is an age group that we don't really cater to. But this would be a camp that would focus on paddling skills. It would be able to get kids out on the water that they might not otherwise have access to. Safety procedures, how to get in and out of, how to get onto and off of a kayak or a canoe, those types of things. So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great
Very
opportunity. And the other thing, I just to kind of bring this full circle, is that this is in the list of suggestions that we collected data on surveys from participants. Kayaking and canoeing was the most that's where people wanted to see us develop something. So it's just kind of taking that feedback and then developing a camp and to follow through on that.
I think it's great.
Got the water for it.
Now, will these be available for like a free rental? You can sign them out at the Dubisky Center when the camp isn't going on, so they're being able to be used not during the camp. That's something that's been discussed or could be discussed possibly.
We would be happy to discuss that and talk that through. Yes.
I just think if we could, instead of just sitting on them when there's not a camp, we can utilize some type of rentals where, if you're a city resident, you can, maybe do a free rental, or if you're not a city resident, maybe we can do a small nominal fee or something like that.
With our newly appointed Recreation Commission, I'm sure our Recreation Director would be happy to bring you a recommendation.
Yeah,
There is a business that rents.
Okay, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Mayor Skelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba?
Yes.
Counselor Fisher?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Counselor Howard?
Yes.
Counselor Reish?
Yes.
Approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Stephen Jelly.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a management services agreement with the Development Authority of the North Country for water, wastewater facilities.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Yeah, not really discussion, but I haven't reviewed it in its entirety. This will be covered 24/7, correct?
Yes, sir.
Obviously. What are our obligations
This is a, it's
as
a 1 year.
far as any, so everything would be contracted out. We wouldn't have any insurance claim. We're not gonna have it.
So largely, Counselor, this agreement is for a multitude of services. The high end of it, if you will, is still currently providing the level 4 operator for the wastewater treatment plant, and then sundry other services that we'd be contracting someone to do. 163,000. It's a 3-year term, renewable each year. So our first year cost us 163,000.
But this is just the base, correct? There's additional fees.
No, this is so some of the stuff we had in the additional contract that was more is because we had capital outlay costs in those contracts. This is everything. You remember we had an agreement for wastewater and we had an agreement for an addendum. Those all expired, so we carved it all into one agreement. But with the capital outlay costs, things like getting our internet connections in there, those things are paid. So that's why it looks significantly less than what we were paying. Nothing's been dropped, just before we were paying for some capital cost.
This was reviewed by legal.
Oh, we're getting a lot of background noise again, please.
I'm sorry, Mike. Mike's got the floor.
I'm good for now. Thanks, Dan.
So we are planning councils. We talked during the budget period. I do expect to bring to council during the 2023 budget deliberations a decision to stop the hybrid process where we've got a dank employee there running the plant. I think we're gonna provide the analysis, all dank employees, all city employees, and council will decide. We'll be at that point now where we can do that. We'll have people trained, capable in there. So, but a good majority of this contract, if you get a second to look at it, is services that will continue to do things that we hold from them, and they've done a good job in the last 3 pages of lining out all those things that we'd have to pay somebody to do, and we get them all done at a one-stop shop.
So what's the Appendix B for? And what do those numbers represent? This is, you look back at it right there.
Yep. So just letting you know how they derived at their cost structure. This is if we require services of these for some reason, if we needed something above and beyond what the rates they would have.
That goes back to my earlier questions. So that's a base fee of 163 this year.
Yeah, and it gives us a cost for next year. Now these are, if we need other services, it gives us an idea of what those costs would be. We have, to my knowledge, under the previous contracts, we've not done that.
Everyone, we're getting a lot of background noise. If you could self-mute.
If you look, Counselor, on page 5 of the contract, it lays out what the terms are. But yes, it's the base that provides all the services we need. If anything above and beyond would truly be above and beyond or unforeseen. There's no other services that would be right now taken on a per diem basis. None that I'm aware of.
These are for management services, correct?
Yes.
And that would be management of all aspects of the wastewater. So it includes labor, any additional labor underneath management or supervision.
Correct. They don't talk in terms of an individual. We have an individual that is normally stationed there, but they manage it kind of from more of a team concept. They've left the one individual there for the most part to provide continuity and consistency with overseeing the project. So we've appreciated that because it's helped us greatly in moving that project along.
What's the savings here that we'd be looking at if we were running it ourselves?
And Counselor, I don't know the answer to that because Shane and I have been, I think this year we have the what I call the labor model together, which is what council approved this year in the budget, a total of 6 positions running the wastewater and treatment plant. The position that we would potentially hire, likely an assistant director of public works with an engineering background, is likely going to cost us all what they're charging us in here for it. I mean, we're not going to hire somebody with an engineering background certification that's, I would say, less than the 85 to 95 range. So that's roundabout what we're paying for that portion of the service now. But again, I think that'll be what we'll be bringing council next year's budget, is the analysis of that of again what it will cost the city to do that position versus what it's costing us to get the service through Dank. As we talked about during the budget, this has worked great for us. We didn't have an operator. Dank obviously provided the service. But I do think we're at the point now with the training of our folks. We've refined the processes. The wastewater treatment plant will be coming to an end this year, substantially at least. I think it'll be the time for the council to analyze and discuss hiring a position to do it ourselves, or if it makes sense to do it in a different manner. I think we have our organization into what Shane and I would describe as kind of a most efficient status. We've kind of gone forward and backward, worked with Dank to refine the number of people that we need to do the job. We thought 5 was going to be the number, but going through this year, with some of the all the duties and the transition, I think again 6 seems to be making a lot more sense. We're training everybody dual certified, so we get the benefit of everyone being able to operate the water and sewer plants, and that's going to take us the better part of this year to bring everybody along a little farther. But
That's a good move, though. Very, very good move.
So this is just to basically jumpstart the new wastewater treatment plant. Is that what I'm understanding from you? We're looking at a 3-year deal here?
No, they've given us a 3-year deal that we can renew each year, Counselor. But no, this is ultimately again. But again, we don't have a chief water operator, a water operator at the. We have a 4A operator or anybody ability to sit for that. So they're still providing us the 4A operator. We still don't have anybody with that certification. So we have somebody at the water plant, Dave LaRock, who's just recently completed his 1A for the water. So I think again we brought the folks along, our internal folks to level train. Sewer requirement time on station is just longer. So and most of our folks there are pretty new. What I'm going to be confident bringing you in the 2023 budget is the analysis to say we do it all in house, or there's an analysis that says doing it all out of house will be more efficient. I don't know, just my first blush at this says the numbers will probably be fairly close, but again we'll have more detail to follow as we move towards that.
I'd like to see the analysis next year. I'm okay with this for this year. I'd like to see that analysis as to what it would cost if we were to run it and operate it ourselves compared to what we'd be farming out to anybody else. And actually, I mean, if we could kind of get a rough idea as to what, like I said, I'll support it this year. But if we could, just for informational purposes, I'd like to have that information as soon as possible.
Understood.
This is a 3-year contract.
No, it's renewable. It's a 3-year. It's year renewable.
They gave you 3 years.
They did. She wanted. And you can see those are just basically cost of living allowances, and there's no significant raises on any given year. The Development Authority is aware of what we're doing. Again, they've been full partners with us. There's no dissension amongst us. The Development Authority will tell you their job is to fill holes, not replace municipal employees, and so they've definitely filled the hole for us. And we'll be prepared to look at potentially another option. We're just not there now. We don't have anybody that I could put in the slot. We'd have to hire somebody. We have Dank has put an engineer in that position, and again, I think it's going to be a difficult hire is the only problem. I think it's going to be a difficult hire. Other than that, everybody else is our employees. All the operators on station are our city DPW.
Okay, Kathy.
Well, just one more quick question, if I can, with the termination aspect of the article. I'd like to see it added 60 days with cause. I mean, that's kind of general language, and 90 without, if we were to choose to go in another direction. That's something I'm accustomed to, I guess.
For the termination.
Right.
Yeah, Counselor, I generally would agree, except in this case, it's sort of a moot point. We
They've
don't
been working doing this.
well, we don't have anybody is the problem. We just don't. And I, again, as I'm saying, not only do I think it'll be a difficult hire, I think it might be a near impossible hire.
Maybe if we choose to continue in this path, maybe you look at it in the previous.
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
next agreement.
No doubt. If you read, Counselor, on page 5 of 12, under the agreement shall be 1 year commencing
I saw
January.
that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of background noise here.
Killing flies,
Guys
John.
could self-mute.
Who's gonna vote now?
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly.
Yes.
Approved.
And that brings us to old business. Does anyone have any old business?
Yeah, what, it was brought up in a phone conversation. I had it in my notes as well. What was referencing the SRO conversations that we had with the school district?
I'm just trying to square away a date. I got all of your dates pinned down. I'm just trying to square up a date for intent. So hopefully I'll have something back to
Do
you.
we have a tentative date?
No, we had a date. It just didn't work out with one of you all's schedules. So I went back and asked him for a couple more dates. He may have sent me back something. I've got to look. I had a lot of emails today. I don't think I had anything from him, but I'll follow back up for sure.
Thank you. Okay, and this brings us to new business.
Yes, I think it's important that we, have a goals session in the near future. I would suggest, maybe next Saturday or the following Saturday, a workshop as it's called, I guess, for the council and the public can participate to set some goals for 2022 if there's interest from the council in doing that.
I'm fine with doing it, but I would prefer it to be a weekday evening. Saturdays are tough.
I prefer Mondays.
If we could do it like on an opposite Monday that we don't have a council meeting or something. Just Saturdays are really hard.
Yeah, next Monday's fine.
Well, if I can attend remotely, I will. Legislative session in the state has started, so it's be hard pressed to make every council meeting other than being remote.
Next Monday's Martin Luther King holiday. So
Why don't we look at the 31st? That would be, we have a meeting on the 24th and then the 31st, there would be nothing.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me. At what time and how long?
6 o'clock,
Maybe 6 to 8 at most. If we,
6 or 8, it's good for me.
That
mean,
sounds good.
anytime we have public comment, I would think we could probably in a session like that, I think we could at least an hour of public comment. I don't think would be unpredictable for that. And I think we should, how long are we going to allow the public to speak in case we prepare statements? Are we looking at 2 to 5 minutes?
yeah, I don't.
Town hall.
That's
Or
not,
is it a town hall where they can speak freely? I just think we should establish a parameter for if we're gonna allow, public
5
participation.
How do workshops generally work? I've never participated in one. What are the rules for the workshop?
Yeah, generally in a workshop setting previously, we've allowed back and forth interaction. I've never attended one virtually. Previously, they've been held and the public has been able to come and it's been more of a roundtable discussion, but this will unfortunately have to be different due to the parameters of City Hall. I think we should just allow maybe 5 minutes per discussion item, but people can speak multiple times. I think that would probably be the best way to go about it. That way we can try to get as many people in as possible.
Why don't we just have people write in their suggestions and or email them to the city clerk? And that way you might not turn it into 4 to 8 hours.
I mean, I think that people genuinely want to be, I think people want to be heard. And I think the best way to do this is allow them to speak. And I think if we put a parameter of, 6 to 8 on it, we're done at 8 o'clock. And if there's still a lot more, people that would like to speak, we can just schedule another night of it.
That's good. The time limit.
Put a time limit on it, 6 to 8, and then at 8 o'clock we're done. And if there's a lot, we get a lot more feedback, we can always schedule another night of it, later on in the week or the following week or something like that.
Probably good night to establish categories and things like that.
Yeah.
More than anything. And we can have workshops addressing everything.
Right, 'cause I think there's definitely a lot of issues that need to be, a lot of goals that could be addressed, and exactly that night to establish different categories, and then maybe we could have separate meetings regarding each category if it becomes extensive.
Will we have specific topics for what goals? I mean, instead of just people just being like not happy.
No, I think
no, what I'm saying is, can we have specific topics for the goals? Like what sections of the city or what we're looking to do, whether or not it's development, whether or not it's staffing, whether or not, whatever, but not just a generic, let's have a workshop and just have the phones just keep ringing. You're not going to get anything done.
I would say probably community development goals primarily, and a lot of those are outlined in the draft community development plan. I don't know if it'll be on an agenda before January 31. Some of that will be addressed if it is. I don't have any problem putting a summary together of what my perception of what council's goals are, so that people can react to that and pass it out to everybody. It would at least give us a framework to work from.
Why don't, by the end of this week, we each email in one topic of goals that we would like to see accomplished, just like a generic overview, and then we can compile the 7 that we all present of different topics, and then we can, if there's duplicates, we'll condense them down, but if we each submit one by Friday of a topic we would like to see discussed, and then we'll stick to those topics at the meeting.
How does this, how will this apply to executive order for meetings?
Not actually a meeting,
It's a workshop.
If we're inviting the public.
So at the moment, the executive order will expire on January 15th. Anticipate. John, can you mute? Oh, yeah. I would anticipate right now with the COVID numbers being the way they are, that's going to be extended. But at the moment, it's still in place. But it is due to expire on the 15th. So again, hopefully we'll get some word soon if it's going to be extended. But so otherwise, if it's not extended, then it's certainly can be open to the public. I think what Councilor Kennedy just said is probably the best way. We establish the framework, get that up there. I'm not 100% sure what Councilor Reish's vision was here, but if I'm following it right, I think he's just trying to establish and make sure that the staff is staying on target with the primary goals and objectives.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's for everybody to have input on, what's the most important items? Is it the cheese plant? Is it Augsbury? Is it Diamond? Is it the home rule legislation? That's what I was looking at.
So maybe the best way is, excuse me, I will send you all what I had prepared tonight, which had several categories as I saw, priorities, everything from political issues we need to work through with the different government levels, to internal doctrine, excuse me, charter changes, administrative regulations, et cetera. So I'll send you all that, and then you can, you know, I would say send back what you think of the general topics there ought to be. So let me give it to you from there, and I think because I think that way you keep the public focused on, you know, on what you're looking for feedback on. Excuse me.
So are we going to tentatively set that for 1:31 pending anything changing? Okay.
I think the only thing will be, again, it'll be a open public meeting. If the executive order is not in place, people can come. If they can't, then we'll do it just like we're doing.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, and this brings us to new business.
That was new business.
That was new business?
Yep.
So another thing for new business, I've had quite a few people in the snowmobile clubs talk to me about trying to allow the city to have some passageway for snowmobilers, so that, well, it would certainly help the businesses in town, but getting across the river, they talked about how unsafe it is, and there was discussion, I know, on keeping the south side of the sidewalk unplowed on the White Bridge, so the snowmobiler can cross without having to go all the way around Hewelton and back through. You see them on the highways and things like that. So I didn't know if we could begin that discussion, maybe with DPW and the police chief, things like that, as to what changes would have to be made. And I think it would be good economic development. Snowmobiling's a big business this time of year. Of course, we could use a little bit more snow, but if we could just look at some of the things, I don't know if there's special surfaces. I see on the highways where there's snowmobile crossings and the trails, there's a special surface laid over top of blacktop. I know that, so that it doesn't hurt the blacktop. And I don't know if it's, equivocal with the snowmobiles, if it's easier on the runners or what. I don't know anything about it. But I do see the spots. If you're going into Hewelton, for example, there's an area in the road. You're from Tupper, you probably see it all the time, right? So if we could look at maybe allowing snowmobilers to cross that south side of the bridge. And the reason that they suggested the south side was because the sun doesn't melt the snow right there. And, things like that. I don't know if we wanted to, in the long term, allow certain other passageways in the city or not. Besides just maybe going up from Lake Street to pick one of the lanes or something to get them back to the highway and connect back on the trail. Because there's two trails. There's one up by United Helpers, the old United Helpers, and then there's one that starts by Napa. And so the only way to get across the city is to go all the way to Hewelton and back. It's kind of long. So if we can look at something like that, coordinate with the different departments.
Do we have my contact by chance?
I'll get the guy's name from the Potlatch Club in Hewelton. Okay. And I know that there's guys in Augsburg that would probably want some input on that too, as to what's best. So.
I had a city resident ask me about 15 Green Street. I see we own that now on this packet. That last windstorm, a lot of broken glass and half the roof blew off. You know anything about it, Shane, or just?
What was the address?
1503 Green. That's that trailer, yeah. I just seen on the paper there, he asked me about it because he was fighting with whoever owned it at one time, but he said half the roof blew off and sitting over in the field, so. And he said a lot of animals in the building. He wants to know if we could do anything about it, so just want to bring it to your attention.
Yeah, we're on it. Huh? Did windstorm like the last couple of nights, or?
Yeah, the windstorm we had it here about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said blew it right off. We're sitting over in the field. A lot of it.
We didn't know it then, but we do know it.
There goes the resale value.
Yeah. The roof is, well, no, it's gonna be torn down. All right. Just want to bring it.
Items for discussion?
Just on the front of the agenda, it states that comments to be read at the meeting need to be made before 4 PM on Monday. With this new guidance, people today that weren't able to have their comments read in correspondence, they were only following the directive that we had on the agenda. So going forward, I think that needs to be changed if that's what's reflected, because the people were just doing what they were told today. They didn't realize that the change. So I just think that we need to make sure we're clear with the parameters. If we need to change that to before 4 on Friday or whatever, just make sure the wording is fixed.
We do, and there'll be some follow-on administrative regulation changes based on that.
And I believe, Steve, you have something for a couple issues.
If we're on items for discussion, so excuse me, just the discussion on the Cfa Grants. Yes, it's open. Yes, we're working on it. Yes, we'll consult with the IFF's expert. I just want to make sure council's clear on this. Can listen to all the experts. There's a lot of them. Everybody who thinks this is a process that there's some magic involved in. The Cfa Grant is one of the few grants out there that is very, very objective. It is objective for a reason, so that every fire department in America, based on what your financial capability is or the intellect of the organization you have, has the ability to compete fairly for a very, very competitive grant. Therefore, the grant process is very, very objective. Fill in the blanks that ask several specific questions. I think all of you asked for the last one. You can see on there, there's a very small place where you get to kind of make your pitch. But I assure all of you, it doesn't have a lot to do with the making the pitch. It has to do with the financial resources, the numbers, the compliance, things like that. We weren't as competitive last year because we were sitting at the recommended, efficient staffing of 4. I think that obviously has changed this year, so I hope that we'll be a little more competitive. Please, everybody understand, as we talked about before, the Cfa Grant, we largely will not hear about until late summer or fall at the latest. So this is an impact to 2023, not 2022. Following through the Cfa Grant, I want to bring to council's attention again. We just went through, in my opinion, a long and lengthy budget process. And everybody in this council knew the staffing that we approved in the budget. I didn't hear any recommendations. There were no motions passed. There were no ideas floated about how to increase staffing in the fire department. We had some lengthy discussion about the police department, but none in the fire department. I told all of you then we couldn't sustain minimum staffing of 4 people when I only start the shift with 4 people. It's not sustainable. It's the same situation we have in the police department. We only start the day with so many people. We end up using the invisible man overtime to staff. I provided you what I thought was a comprehensive look at the levels of staff.
Steve, I don't mean to interrupt you, but during the budget discussions, I don't think you said anything about reducing from a 4-man shift to a 3-man shift. If you did, please correct me. I'm more than willing to listen.
I did. I certainly told you in my preamble. I'll get it and bring you back the quote. Again, we started a shift with 4 people. There has to be people allowed off for vacation, for training, for sick leave, etc. We can't sustain 4 people per day when we only start the shift with 4 people. So I don't know how that got by everybody. I'm certainly willing to rehash and we can rediscuss it. But this is about where council wants to put the resources. So I certainly brought it up. The numbers were right in front of you, how many people we had on staff. So I'm a little I'm a little concerned that council appears to be so uninformed on this topic. Based on the resources I was given, I did reach out to the IFF. They saw the budget pass. I had an idea, had some concepts that I think can sustain us for another year at 4 people. The most significant is giving up the hazard pay that, as you all know, from my perspective, is not hazard pay. Hazard pay would be paid for a shift that's below a certain number of staffing. The pay that we do now is when the number of assigned people that we employ fall below a certain number. That's not hazard pay. That puts the city in a position to hire or pay the people that are there more money. It's not hazard pay. I think it's a fair ask. It's $200,000 that could be put towards the overtime budget, and we'll continue to function like we did, using overtime to do that as we work through what will be next year's staffing. To compound matters, similar to the police department, if you all gave me the money tonight for 4 or 5 more people, I don't believe I can hire them. There's one person on the list, maybe 2. Second one's a maybe. There's a priority fill, a priority job ask to the one individual that was laid off and not brought back. I don't know that he would be interested in returning, but and we have one other name on a list. It was an individual from out of the area that I'm not 100% certain was interested in relocating here from Central New York, but so I couldn't hire them anyway. So we're sort of compounded the same way we were with the police department and getting the people to fill the position. So I guess I want to say I'm trying to lower the level of rhetoric on this. This is going to become a stupid discussion. It's just a stupid discussion. Nobody wants to see anybody endangered. I'm not comfortable with the 3-person minimum staffing. I'm not comfortable with it. But I'm not comfortable with the city expending resources that we don't have either. It's going to lead us to no fire department. For this year, the average cost to employ a firefighter is now up to $153,000. The costs escalate every year. This is not being anti-fire department. This is not being anti our people, and it's got nothing to do with not honoring a contract. It's got to do with what the city can sustain for financial resources. I don't know what the solution is long-term of how we increase revenue at the same pace that the cost of our expenses is increasing. Probably when I solve that, I'll be able to write books about it or something. But at the moment, it's not there. I don't know how to do it. This is a lot. Our costs are increasing significantly. There's a reason why we're the only community in this county that has a fully paid staff. There's a reason for it. It's just about affording it. I think there are solutions. I really wish that we could drop the rhetoric. We could drop the talk about people dying, nobody caring about houses burning and people's houses will burn. This is just all talk. It's not things that are really happening. We had 5 fires in the city of Ogdensburg last year. 5 fires is not how we justify an overall budget of close to $4 million. It's not how we do it. There is plenty of emergency services call and need in this community for the fire department, but we have to think about how we're going to use it differently. There were 38 calls booked in as fires in 2021. 38. Most of those were false calls. They were calls that they were also car fires. They were outdoor rubbish fires. But by and large, we had 5 fires. There was over 15 responses that we made for medical calls, over 800 the previous year. There is a need for emergency services. There is a need for the fire department to begin filling the void that I think is going to continue to be the de-escalation of the volunteer rescue squad. The problem with all these topics is we can't get out of our own way talking about them because we're going to insult somebody. So when I say the volunteer rescue squad is having difficulty meeting their mission, they're having difficulty meeting the demands today based on working in a community where they draw so little based on the Medicare, Medicaid rate, they're largely moving to wanting to do more transports, which is going to bring them more money. They're covering more and more areas for other people's EMS resources that are dwindling. And it's going to leave us filling the void. This is not the demise of the fire department, but I don't know how any of us can think that we're going to continue to justify an organization based on an old model of fighting fires that aren't occurring. There were 5 fires. 5. We do things better today. We do better with prevention. We do better with flame spread. We do better with teaching people to make sure that they don't have fires. We build a model around the least amount of calls we do. I'm going to spend close to $1 million buying a fire truck pretty soon. We spent a couple $100,000 upgrading firefighting equipment, firefighting communications gear, etc. All these things for the thing that we do the very least. So we've just got to look realistically at what the organization needs to be to meet the community's needs. Now, I'm not restricting the EMS for any other reason than for what one of Mr. Bouchard's comments was. I can't have them all going to every EMS call where they're likely not needed and ending up infected with COVID. We're covering enough calls. We're covering the ones that they can't, the Ogdensburg Rescue can't get to, regardless of the type of call it is. So all the parameters I put in place are if nobody is available. I don't know if it was really 500 calls we didn't go to last year. It doesn't really matter. I put some reasonable things in place that was pretty much in line with what everybody else in the state did. I took it a little bit farther initially when COVID was the worst. We restricted it back to, again, from my perspective, exactly what the state recommendation was and the calls that myself and the officers looked at and said, if we don't need to be at those, if somebody's coming, we don't need to have multiple people exposed. No sense having 6 or 7 people exposed to somebody if it's not a call that requires those hands. I'd like to find a way to de-escalate the rhetoric on this and de-escalate the way we're talking about it. People dying. We're going to watch houses burn. We're not going to do any such thing. We're not going to do any such thing. We're not going to fight many fires until backup gets there anyway. Whether there's 3 people, 4 or 5, we're not going to do much firefighting in actually entering fires, well-involved structural fires, until there's backup there anyway. It's not enough people. The 2 in 2 out rule is a government bare bottoms minimal standard to make sure that people don't do stupid things and get people killed. It's not the recommended practice. The recommended practice by the NFPA is that we assemble close to 15 people on the fire. That's what the standard is, to be able to conduct efficient operations safely, fill all the positions that we need to make sure that we're operating the trucks right, we're advancing hoses, backup lines, people to ventilate, people to provide standby teams, incident commanders. We need about 15 people to do it. So it doesn't matter if we had 3 or 4 or 5, we got to have the backup. So I wish we could get off the discussion about we're using the mutual aid to fill our voids. We're not. We should have always been using mutual aid at a greater level than we were. Mayor and I just went to a meeting in Heuvelton. The Heuvelton Fire Chief commented, relationship between Augsburg and Heuvelton is the best that it's ever been. Great. That's what we need to hear. Best it's ever been. We'll go whenever they call, regardless of the number of people we have, because they come for us. I just think everybody, this is one of the topics for this workshop. I just think we need to understand better what we're doing. 5 fires. If I was doing 5 of anything else in this city, you all wouldn't give me the kind of money that you put into the fire department to do it. You wouldn't do it. It's not there. We don't have the resources. We're not using this money for anything other than necessities. And the militant union behavior, militant, it's just militant, not discussing things, not sitting down. Come on. I mean, you can't ask for people to be flexible while you're not being flexible at all. I understand that they feel scorned about the contract. I get it. I also understand the majority council feels scorned because the darn contract that was an impasse when this council took over got ramrodded through with things that were never even on the table. So I wish we could just all get over that. We haven't violated any other parameter of the contract. Hell, I'm still paying this ridiculous job security pay. Haven't violated it. We violated the areas that we took to court and let a judge decide. So far, we have a judge's decision, and we'll get another judge's decision, coming up here soon. That decision, for clarity, so everybody understands what that is, will tell us if I have to go to arbitration. It won't tell us, go back to 5, do this, do that. It'll say you have to go to arbitration, or Judge Farley's order continues, you don't have to go to arbitration. That's it. So no matter what decision we get, if it's for us, we keep moving forward. If it's for arbitration, we schedule the arbitrator, we wait for that, we wait for a decision, et cetera. It's probably nothing that impacts 2022. So what do we do for 2022? I'll come back to you with some proposals soon if I don't get the union to agree on this has pay.
Is this part of the agenda? I mean, we're
yeah,
it's part of the grant.
Yeah, it's under Cfa. Sure it is. It's all related. It's all related. I mean, I don't. Your community's been calling. Everyone's talked about it tonight.
You're saying you're going to apply for the grant. You're going to use the IAFF resources, and outside of the Cfa grant, there's many other grants that are out there. EMT grants and everything. I suggest you exhaust every avenue so that we can actually assist.
Yeah, not really
in some 911 calls.
Not really for staffing though. I mean, Cfa grants really it. And it's only a short period of time.
It's 3 years.
3 years. 3
years. So then,
so the question just is, what do we want to do? I mean, I don't. We were silent on this during the budget. I mean, I'm not going to let you all escape
the budget got moved. We talked about the police department in the budget that day, and then 2 councilors, the mayor and Councilor Reich, moved the budget. Period. There was no other discussion outside of the fire department or other entity that was encompassed in that budget.
We had a fire department night for discussion, Councilor. That was a topic for discussion. Police department and fire department for that. We had a workshop on it, and we didn't talk about it. Nobody asked me any questions.
We had multiple other departments and agency aspects of the budget to look over as well.
I did police and fire. I mean, I specifically set a night aside for it.
Did Heuvelton actually sign the mutual aid agreement?
It's not a mutual aid agreement. Heuvelton and every department in this county, and I'm glad you brought that up, Councilor Kennedy. The mutual aid agreement is a county-wide agreement that we've signed years ago. It's not a mutual aid agreement. What Heuvelton was asked by me to do was sign an agreement that talked about automatic dispatching. My people don't have to pick up the radio and call, the dispatcher will do it. They didn't want to do it. They feel like it might drive too many calls, false calls, so they're not doing that. So we pick up the radio and call them. It's not, but the mutual aid agreement is a countywide level agreement that we all sign up to. You shouldn't confuse the two. People that are not fully understanding of the topic confuse the two, but in the future, we don't sign independent agreements with each community. The county has a mutual aid, county level mutual aid program. The counties are directed by the state to have a countywide mutual aid program. And we have that. It's working. So I'm other than taking a beating, other than letting our community think that, you know, I don't care about this, I don't care about that one. I mean, it's not, I'm using the resources that you gave me. I think all of you know, and it would be helpful if all of you were parlaying to the community. 4 people minimum on a daily basis is not going to work I start the day with 4 people every day. It's not going to work. If I'm starting with 4, 3 is I'm going to sustain and still use overtime. Some of the comments tonight weren't far off. What if we get COVID? What if people get sick? Yes, we could drop down below that. It's an expensive proposition. So I'll hope we can identify this as one of the topics during workshops and have some constructive conversation going forward and depart from the idea that the only thing between safety and people burning their houses down is the city manager and some policy that people want to hold me accountable for. I'm working with the budget resources that I was given by council.
You know, we lost a lot of money with sales tax, I think. We
did.
You know, and the mutual aid has worked. I mean, 5 fires is much more than normal in the city. And I mean, all the departments did great work.
Fires, CMS as well. Personally, I support 4 firemen minimum on a shift myself, and I think it's good that we have a town hall meeting on this and invite the public and have some back and forth. You know, I mean, at budget time, there was clear opposition against cutting an extra 10% and at the same time, public safety. And quite certain that tone was expressed during the election as well. And the message was sent. We really don't want to see public safety compromised. I look forward to the back and forth on the 31st. And I think it should be a topic. So I think EMS is very important. I'm sure it was around 500 calls that we didn't answer. Maybe that's state protocol, maybe it isn't. In Ogdensburg, I know for years that hasn't been protocol. And we need to have a better agreement.
John, I think you're having can you self-mute? A lot of background noise.
Yeah, so anyways.
I'll lay out the EMS calls again. I'm for the very reason that we're talking about the fire department's primary mission is response to fire and rescue calls. Again, we're not equipped or staffed to respond to each and every medical call. Think about that. It doesn't make sense. Once I'm there and we're committed and not relieved by the EMS people, it's our call. We're there. We're not going anywhere if there's another call. So this is trying to use the resources and make sure that we have them in place. So for when the next call happens, we can respond. We're not denying. It doesn't matter what the call is. If the ambulance isn't available, we're going to any calls, whether it's a hangnail or a headache. The fire department goes to close the gap until an ambulance gets there, because sometimes it takes 25 or 30 minutes to get one from another community, or we're waiting for the Ogdensburg ambulance to go to the hospital and clear the call and get to us. So we do operate this on a, it's a skinny operation. There's no 2 ways about it. If any of you listen to the scanner, look at the reports that go out. I mean, the city generates a lot of medical calls, and the fire department contributes enormously to that. Enormous. Thank you.
I think it's ridiculous that it's put on to Steve Jelly, onto the city manager, when there was decades and decades. And what did this city council do? This city government do to grow revenue so we could afford these departments? You know, I mean, it's not his fault that this is a limited amount of revenue. It's not his fault that the county took money. You know, you were there, the first meeting. Like, how does it wash on to him that we have this much revenue and that's all there is? And as far as lowering the taxes, you know what? We're not the ones that got them up he had no hand in getting them up to the constitutional limit that we're trying to bring them down from, you know? So it just seems pretty ridiculous that it all falls on him now and everyone else has got clean hands. So you had something else, Steve, on?
I just call council's attention to the handout on the property tax chargebacks from the county. It's a topic, again, I'd like to discuss during the workshop. I think it'll be more appropriate then. I can give a more detailed presentation, but in essence, from my perspective, I view this as invisible tax. These are things that are added to the county tax bill that no public official votes on, no public hearing is held. For our part of all the 4 topics that are in here, we get chargebacks on: election, real property, workers' comp, and community college. The workers' comp, we participate voluntarily with the county program. It's a good deal for us, better than if we probably hired it ourselves. I think that dollar amount in the future has to be considered within the council budget. I don't think that we're doing our taxpayers any justice by setting our budget and tax rate, but then on their county bill, they get billed back for something that is another, whatever the cents are, 20, 30 cents, whatever it is to pay for that. So I'm just, and then the other charges I want council to look at, and I just think there needs to be some discussion between this council and the county officials about these charges that, again, no public official votes for, no public hearing is held. These were last year's charges that are being levied as additional cents, if you will, towards the county tax bill. Yes, some of them are allowed by law. Yes, the county has some discretion for some of them. I just don't understand how the amounts are being done, how they're being billed a year later. And again, nobody discusses that. The taxes in this county, in this city, the school district are high enough. These invisible charges that show up as chargebacks on your tax bills, and all of you look at your county tax bill, you'll see this in here. I'm going to have the numbers broke down by the workshop. So for instance, the Ogdensburg share, our chargebacks, our total chargebacks was $375,233, which is our workers' comp. So I'll be able to tell you what that would have impacted our budget by had that number just been in our city budget, and it could have been. They know what the number is that they're going to charge early enough. They could give that to me. I could put it in the budget. The other charges for the election charges and the community college charges, I just feel like members of this council should be discussing with the county what is it and why are we doing it? Why are we levying these charges? Why are we looking to levy everything we can back on the towns, villages, and the city instead of letting the county pay for this overall with a much greater budget than they've done? I feel like this is just a continued march by the county to use more and more money for themselves and pass every expense off on the smaller governments. Sales tax revenue this year will likely exceed $9 million more collected by St. Lawrence County from 2020 to 2021. And here are bills that are being levied back on people's county tax bill. The tax rate that they announced does not include these things. It is the county tax rate for the year 2022. These are last year's charges. Again, no public official votes on these things. No public hearings are held. They just get added to the tax bills. And so I think there needs to be discussion. I think, again, I'll discuss with you my thoughts on the workers' comp. I think that is clearly our piece. But those other 3 charges that are county services, I just don't understand why the notion that you should be billing this back to individual communities. The county government serves to serve the smaller municipalities for a reason. And what's next? This list is at 4 right now. What's the next charge that'll be a chargeback that the county can say that they don't have to put in their budget? They're just going to charge it back to the communities. We've got to get our hands around this. If we think of our 3 tax rates as being town or city, county, and school, the chargebacks is another one that we don't know what's coming until the bill gets there. Nobody knows what the chargebacks are going to be until their bill shows up.
And I'll tell you, other communities are not happy about it either. I've been with mayors and town supervisors at their conferences, and they're all upset by it too. Thank you, Steve. This brings us to citizens' participation.
We got more
Oh, you got more?
Okay. So just a couple things. Mike Tooley had a question based on a press release. Is it the official opinion of the city of Augsburg that he is a baseless taxpayer? Was that his question, Kathy?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Not my opinion.
Position that it was a position
Of city council.
if he offers a baseless opinion letters to or for the city residents.
I think Mike Tooley's incredibly respected in this community, good numbers man and everything else. And I think he has Never, he always presents himself in a gentlemanlike fashion, and he doesn't deserve that. I think we should take that post down.
Well,
And reword.
I'll say this, he is well respected, and the numbers have been continually incorrect. And he does not, I've tried to talk with him a number of times on city matters and give him numbers and input, and he's always refused. So he goes in, he only looks at the numbers from one side or the numbers with an outcome that he wants, and he's been incorrect. And because of his status and his job at the diocese, yeah, he should do a better job and come with correct numbers.
My comment based on what he said being baseless, I'm not taking back under any circumstances. He published a note that I did not follow through with directions, quite frankly, his recommendations from council. The truth was I did that. I sent Councilor Powers also a quite lengthy email talking about step by step all the things that I had done, the efforts I had taken. And I'm quite frankly disinterested in Mr. Tooley spreading false information about what I did or didn't do. I'll speak for myself what I didn't do or do. I did follow council's direction to the T with every possibility I could. I coordinated with the county on each and every occasion that I could. And him publishing to the community with his well-respected status that I didn't is quite frankly just false. That is the truth. Everything he posted in there was false. I did absolutely everything I was asked to do by the council. I did absolutely everything I could do to coordinate, work with the county, and plan a proper transition. And the county took every opportunity. Renee Cole took every opportunity to ensure that she made this process as difficult for the city of Ogdensburg as she could. She did not have to levy taxes on us at the first of the year. For 50 years, county property taxes have not been collected on January 1st in the city of Ogdensburg, and they didn't have to be this year. Retaliation because we beat them in a ridiculous lawsuit. And for Mike Tooley, a city resident, to take up for the county treasurer who blatantly retaliated against all city residents because the county lawsuit was defeated, I don't have any remorse for that, counselor. And I'm not taking
and
it. It was
the county
those were
also
baseless.
wouldn't tell our own legislators the information that we were asking, because we asked them also, and they couldn't get the information.
Every member of this council ought to be outraged at the fact the county stuck that on us. There was nobody in this room that was told by the county they were going to do it because they never told anybody they were going to do it. They just did it. And then acted like it, sent a phony letter to everybody in the city that out of confusion. There was no confusion. Did anybody in this room not clearly understand from about last summer that we were done collecting their tax? I don't know how it could have been any clearer. We've been talking about it for 6 months. They sued us to try to get us to stop doing what this council passed in a charter change. It didn't work. The only confusion was they didn't act when we did the charter change as they should have. They rolled the dice that they were going to beat us in court, and they didn't. They ought to apologize to the city residents for taking such drastic action to take their money with no notice. Mr. Tooley should be ashamed of himself as a city resident for applauding Renee Cole's vicious actions against the city.
And
with all that, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Where is the anger of from everyone of all the sales tax money lost? You were at one meeting, the first meeting.
Oh, trust me.
How were we treated there?
I'm upset.
How were we treated?
And I expressed so then, and I continue to express so.
I don't hear much from this community against the people who are wrongfully taking our money, who are trying to stop the legislation that we deserve to collect our own money.
It's a different issue, but bring it up if you want, but I was just addressing Mike Tooley, and I think he deserves better. And obviously, we have a disagreement here on council about that.
Yeah,
We did disagree.
Yeah, I think we agree to disagree on that, but I just would like to see any personal any personal things left out of anything that on the city website. Just my own personal preference going forward.
I say if you don't make it personal, it won't be personal back. I don't know.
Well, that's part of governing, right? I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, and I'm not saying right, wrong, or indifferent on either side of the coin here, but I mean, is our city official website actually this? Well, I mean,
You should be.
well, you know what? That's done in meetings.
You don't have
that's
a
when you bring
position
them
on
in.
what the county did to us?
You know,
You haven't stated it.
And, you
And
know,
I didn't post anything on the city website.
deciding whether or not to answer a question through public appearance or citizen participation on the whim, I mean, doesn't get the answers out there. And, you know, by calling people out in derogatory and defaming ways on a city website through a governmental portal, you know, I mean, if you want to you want to put your media releases out there, go ahead and have at it. But quite frankly, it should come up here for review through council.
Again, it's false information. There's nothing on the
Well,
city website.
that's your opinion.
It's not on the city website.
And
If you
some
can
of
find
it may be, some of it may
It's
not
false.
be. But at the end of the day, we're not here to call out our citizens. I mean, that's not our job. Our job is to govern, and we did. We supported the. I'm not done yet. We supported the sales tax. We supported we supported it unanimously, the property tax, the school aspect of it all.
Stop yelling.
We've done our job. I'm not done yet. We've done our
Stop
job,
yelling.
and we're continuing to do it. But at the end of the day, is our city website really the portal? I don't think it should be. And if you want to 4 and 3 it to death, have at it. But I don't think it should be on the city website. By calling out whether it's Mr. Tooley, Mrs. Loffler, Mr. Loffler, or any alleged disruptor.
It's not on the city website.
That's just my position.
It's
So
not on the city website.
You can do what you want.
It doesn't matter how many times you say something is false, Counselor, it's not going to make it true. It's not on the city website.
You called the whole group, Bill, called them thugs and all names.
Who did?
When we were elected, right here.
Who called them thugs?
You did.
I
You called them a mob.
You're full of
You did too.
it. Well, what, over your disruption in the chamber?
That's when I got up. Called you out on your own election. After you said that to all those people, all those residents and citizens. Anyway.
Your Honor, point of order, could we just go on with the meeting instead of the yelling and screaming? The spectacular stuff should be done now. Let's move on.
Thank you, Steve, Deputy Mayor. Okay, and this brings us to citizen participation. At this time, anyone attending remotely, use the raise hand feature and you'll have 2 minutes.
The first individual is registered as IAFF 1799, and I have unmuted that individual.
Hi, good evening. It's President Bouchard here. I was trying to call in earlier, had a little technical difficulty. I assume I'm not going to be allowed the 5 minutes I wished, but I have kind of chopped down what I've said. I've learned a couple of things today, and I've been able to update my presentation at first. But a couple things came to me today, and I don't want to waste too much time. Sales tax are actually up exponentially. It's been reported widespread. That's just another one, but I could update my numbers now. With 12 people gone, we're up to $1.8 million per year, which will cover your shortfall with the county from our union alone for the rest of the world until you guys hire people. But anyways, saying as you guys can't apparently afford our lucrative perks, as we've called them, we'll play devil's advocate for a second. What are these so-called perks and where do they come from? Hazard pay was put into and instituted into our contract in 2008. A simple breakdown of how this clause works is that if any shift is assigned less than 6 firefighters, we, which we're now 4x4, are awarded money contractually from the city for operating in that hired hazard. So we've never actually accepted this perk ever. Not once. We've in fact waived it many times when we knew that people were to be hired. If you want this perk to go away, you can hire people and it would disappear. The next one would be compensatory time or overtime. This is not actually a perk. This is time worked by our members, and this increased amount of compensatory time is also created by the drastic cuts you've made. Less people to staff shifts means more overtime. So hiring people, you could not only decrease paying us the benefits that you wish to take from us, but make the city safer in the process. Sounds like a no-brainer. So what do we really make of this 3-man minimum? In 2020, our union had an economist look into the city's finances. His findings then concluded that the city's financial strength was healthy and improving due to the actions taken by the former city manager and council. Various ratings indicated a healthy and increasing fund balance. The only concern was the proximity to the constitutional tax limit, which no longer exists with the cuts that have been enacted. It is our union's belief that it is fiscally impossible to claim inability to pay given these facts. If the city does believe that they cannot afford to honor the contract,
we ask that we simply prove it. This could be done through the guaranteed binding arbitration process present in our contract to settle disputes, such as this one. If it was truly provable, would the city manager not have already filed for arbitration to prove it? Why haven't you? So what's really at play here? Last year, the city manager reduced the number of EMS calls by over 500. That is a fact, and we can prove that one. Already this year, we've stood by today 29 EMS calls in not even 10 days. And now, by implementing this 3-man minimum, we're putting our safety and the safety of our citizens, their friends, their families, their pets, their property, in even greater jeopardy, and intentionally making us less effective. Seemingly due to the city administration's inability to access our contract, citizens of Ogdensburg are calling 911 and being denied the services they've come to expect. Is this really about inability to pay or lack of desire to pay in an effort to demolish our department? We think the latter. I just can't imagine that a reduction of 42.85% of our departmental manpower is not enough. I know that 4 wasn't enough, as was indicated in numerous meetings that we had. But now we're changing the city, or Ogdensburg Fire Department's mission statement on the city's website without our knowledge to not include medical calls. I know that's the job as fire chief, but it seems like something that the public would have liked to have known. I wish I could have presented my entire 5-minute presentation. Clearly, there were plenty of technological difficulties this evening, and I hope we can straighten those out going forward. I would love to have the opportunity to meet with all of you and be there in person to have this presentation, and I think the public would like that as well. I appreciate the time to speak with you tonight. We have clearly conceded more than any other unit in the city, and we continue to work as hard as we can with what we have, and we will. But the absolute perks that you call them, Mr. City Manager, are ones that you could eliminate by putting more people in this building and more people on the streets to help them in case of emergency. But it doesn't seem like that's a priority. Thank you very much. Good night.
The next individual is registered as Michael Tooley, and I have unmuted your line. It appears your line is open, sir.
Yes, thank you. I just want to speak a little bit about some of the reaction tonight. You know, when the county sent out their notice with regards to the collection schedule for county taxes in 2022, and you know, the city manager expressed his displeasure with that notice, lack of timely notice, but also expressed surprise by the city that taxes actually would be levied in January and payments starting in January. And the point of my first letter was that I suggested back in September that that possibility would exist and asked the city to do some follow-up. Well, in the discussions that have taken place since then and tonight, you know, while there may have been interactions with the county to try to obtain this information, and the county may not have provided the information to the city manager or council as requested, that, as far as I can tell, was never communicated to our citizens. The first indication at all that we might be looking at a January tax bill came from the notice from the county. And as I said in my most recent letter, I just think the city could have been more proactive in saying, you know, we've reached out to the county, but they're not giving us any answers, but you should be prepared, like other municipalities in the county, that you could be receiving a January tax bill, payments starting in January, you should plan accordingly. But I just asked for some proactiveness, and that didn't happen. I also thank the county for opening an office so that people can pay locally if they choose to do so. So, you know, could the language of the notice have been better? Yes. Could the timing of the notice, you know, been longer? It would have been preferable, you know, but, you know, at least there's some communication from the county on the issue. No communication ever came from the city as far as I can tell. In terms of the editorial comment, it goes back to comments I've made earlier about the city council allowing the city manager to editorialize in his public communications or in social media. You know, in effect, now the city's website is almost like a one-way Facebook page. And that's disappointing to me. In regards to the mayor's comments about
Mike,
numbers, yes.
Mike, I'm sorry, your 2 minutes is up. It's been up for a little bit now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to say one thing is that we are proactive. We are paying back decades of debt to the county. We have paid the county since we came into office on time every year, and we have taken this action to relieve the city of having to make that county whole. And that's pretty proactive.
It's clear, I guess, I don't know how it's not clear, but the town hall for Ogdensburg Facebook page is not run and administered by the city of Ogdensburg. That is a private Facebook page. It is not a city Facebook page. It is not city administered. I know there are plenty of people that think that it is, but it's not. There's nobody in the city staff administrates that. It's completely private. The city of Ogdensburg has been working with Facebook to get our Facebook page back. We've not been successful legally breaking through that. The city website has been going on. There's none of this information that's being spoken of tonight. All the comments, I believe, are directed towards what's called the Town Hall for Ogdensburg Facebook page that is completely private.
So if you represent yourself as the mayor or a city councilor or the city manager, then you're representing the city. Is that not correct? Did the Supreme Court not make decisions in these matters ever?
I didn't say at all, Counselor, that I was trying to represent myself as somebody else. I'm just making the point. It's not the city web page, the city Facebook page. If council seeks to limit what I can or cannot say as part of my official duties or to respond to things on social media or otherwise, regular media that are just outright false, I'll take direction from council when it's provided. At the moment, I respond to those things across all medias, print, television, Facebook, etc., that I think are outrageous. And again, I find Mr. Tooley's comments that he posted were not correct. They weren't accurate by any means. Appreciate his explanation and opinion, but those are just not the facts of how things transpired. They're not the facts.
I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe Mr. Tooley's comment was referencing the town hall. I believe he was referencing the city website being a one-sided Facebook page. It was kind of a reference. He's not saying that. I didn't get from him that he was suggesting that this town hall site on Facebook was being administered by anybody from the city. That's not what I got from him.
The city website has no ability to comment back to it. It is complete. It is one-way information. We post the things that are appropriate that goes on the city website. I took the comment tonight from Brian Mitchell. We have the updates on there under news flashes, I guess, instead of moving them each week to the block that is for city updates. But the city website is something completely different than what I think is being referenced. We don't comment on the city website. There's no place to do that.
Are there any more, Kathy?
The next individual is registered as Brenda Hill, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think you could probably save some money if perhaps the city manager cut his hours down if he's working so much. Maybe you could save some money that way. And I think it's very, very discouraging how you're burning so many bridges tonight. You're just burning bridges from everybody, the talk, the behavior. You're all adults there. Is there no way that you can maybe, even if you don't like what's being said, could you perhaps listen to it and just kind of take it and not fight back? And I don't know, Mayor Skelly, if I ask a question, I don't get an answer. But boy, Mike Tooley comes on and says something, there's a whole darn conversation about it. I don't get it. It's like I thought, if you ask a question, you should get an answer, but apparently not. You answer what you want to answer when you're ticked off about something. Otherwise, we're just shoved aside. As far as the city manager goes saying that we haven't only had 5 fires, what happens if we have one tonight? How many firemen are on? What happens if there's a whole family in the house in the middle of the night and they can't go in and get them? What happens then? Because it is going down below 0 tonight. You know how people, warm their houses with odd things. I was just wondering. Thank you very much.
Next, Kathy.
Do you want to answer that? 4 people on duty tonight?
The next individual is registered as Maureen Brashaw, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears your line is self-muted.
Hello there.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Can you first of all make sure that Reish and Fisher are muted? I can hear him now.
She just
She asked that
because last time she was speaking, there was a lot of background noise, so she was just making sure everybody was muted.
I was muted. Thank you.
Okay, so is Mr. Reish muted? Because his light keeps going on and off. And this does not count against my 2 minutes, by the way. Can we get a confirmation on that?
Kathy, is everyone muted?
everyone is showing muted at this time, yes.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
I was muted. Yep.
So you are now. Okay. So, Mike Skelly, you just said recently that you don't see or hear the people standing with you in regards to county issues or city issues or whatever. That's because you're a known liar. Why would we stand with you? And it's also Steve Jelly's actual job as city manager to deal with our issues. So we must address current issues to Steve Jelly. What happened in the past is in fact in the past. We are here now. So is Steve Jelly. Please stop using the past as an excuse to deflect and act like Steve is some victim of all this. He works for us. It's his actions by your direction that we take issue with. And Steve Jelly, you really need to check yourself and your tone with the city council and the people of this city. You work for us, sir. You are there at the council's pleasure. You are not to raise your voice and grandstand for the camera. That's not what you're paid to do. I don't know why we have to keep reminding you of that as well if you're supposedly a professional person. The way that you two engage on Facebook, representing yourself as the city manager, the fire chief, and the mayor, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. On Facebook, you say whatever the hell you want, and then when it comes to on the record, you pretend like, oh my God, all these people are attacking me. Please, it's ridiculous. You look ridiculous. It's juvenile. And one last thing. Why is Phil Clemens calling in regularly now? Then he doesn't speak. Wasn't he fired from his job with our city? We've all seen his negative comments on the Berg on social media for years now. He has no business calling in just so everyone can hear his name. Hey, Phil, move along already. You're a relic from the past. Goodbye.
The next individual is registered as Penny Sharrow, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted.
Oh, there you go. All right, I was going to take my hand down because things have pretty much been covered. I think Mr. Jelly knew what the job was when he signed up for it, Mr. Skelly, and he gets paid well to work hard, and as we all do for the jobs we do. All right, so yeah, it's nice to see him working, but maybe you and him and a few other counselors may work together. Maybe that would lighten the load a little bit. And I don't think it was proper for you to bring to debate over a certain person's name that you brought up just a little while ago with Mr. Jelly and where he works and everything else. That's not very appropriate. He does all this for the concern of the citizens and the finances. All right, if you're concerned, work a little harder, invite him over and talk to him. You had no right to bring up where he works or discuss his name, any of this personal stuff on this public website. Thank you very much.
Next, Kathy.
Kathy,
I'm sorry.
Is there somebody else?
There just was, but it disappeared.
Val Sovey sent me another email because her mic wasn't working earlier. Do I have permission to read her what she? Okay, she just emailed it to me because she didn't have it earlier because of the issues.
So are you proceeding with that now, or do you want me to continue? Go ahead, whatever you
It sounds
decide,
like
Mayor.
Go ahead and
I can wait till the end.
do your Nicole, and then we'll proceed.
All right. On behalf of Val Sovey, good evening. My name is Valerie Sovey. I live at 930 Hasbrook Street in Ogdensburg. I thank council for the opportunity to address this evening. I'm calling to express my concern regarding oversight of the Ogdensburg Fire Department. I recently read a press release posted on the city's website by the city manager and acting fire chief dated January 7th, 2022, titled Ogdensburg Fire Department Minimum Daily Staffing Reduced to 3 after IAFF Local 1799 refuses to negotiate a reduction in perks and hazard pay. The title clearly reveals the true intent of the reduction in minimum daily staffing, which appears to be motivated by less budgetary concerns and more so by the desire of this administration to take punitive and retaliatory action towards the members of the fire department for their unwavering commitment to maintaining the high level of service and public safety outlined in their contract. Citizens and taxpayers of the city both need and deserve. With numerous changes in staffing and operating procedures ongoing in the department, it is little wonder what the members of the Ogdensburg Fire Department believe that the city is not capable of negotiating in good faith. The press release states that the city would like to see daily minimum staffing set at 4 personnel and would like to work towards maintaining 5 personnel as often as possible. However, the city cannot afford that level of staffing until IAF 1799 agrees to negotiate the reduction of firefighter benefits that far exceed the normal salary and benefit program offered to all other employees of the city. In fact, OFD Local 1799, City Hall, and DPW employees represented by CSEA and the OPD all separately and successfully reached binding contractual agreements with the city that are currently in effect. These agreements were contractually negotiated in good faith. The current administration's dissatisfaction with these binding agreements does not negate the city's obligation under law to abide by the terms of these contracts. The Taylor Law defines the term agreement as the result of the exchange of mutual promises between a public employer, the city, and an employee organization, the union, which becomes a binding contract for the period defined therein. Accordingly, City Council should recognize that benefits agreed to in the finalized agreement are not perks, but contractual requirements that both employer and employees must abide by. Minimum staffing, overtime pay, and hazard pay are contractual obligations that the city has already agreed to provide, and it is disingenuous and misleading to imply that fire protection for our community costs too much when operating costs have increased drastically as a result of the slash and burn approach being used to reduce minimum staffing. The process of addressing budgetary concerns was ongoing and began with prior administrations. Reductions were being accomplished gradually through attrition, which is more palatable in a community already suffering from significant job loss and unemployment rates. In addition, the New York State Employment Relations Act, Labor Law, Article 20, Section 702A1-2 provides the process of settlement of labor disputes with the assistance of the Public Employee Relations Board, including conferences, mediation, and reconciliation services, appointment of fact-finding boards, and arbitration of grievances and differences, as well as the assistance in drafting agreements for the adjustment and settlement of any disputes. Section 204 of the Taylor Law further specifies that to negotiate. Oh, okay.
Ready, Kathy?
The next individual is registered as Jennifer Stevenson, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears your line is open.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this time to speak to council and to our city manager. 2 years ago, I stood before city council when we were allowed to visit in person and speak to you. And I then said to you that we all needed some additional training in governance. I was speaking nicely when I said we all need some training in governance. There are specifically some people that sit in council and that manage the city that need more training than others. I encourage you to reach out to the New York Council of Mayors and see if they have any speaking classes that you can take for training, because I have never seen anyone treat staff and citizens and your superiors, being the council, in the manner in which you have spoken and which you do, in the way that you react on social media. I belong to many organizations, some with over 60,000 members, some with 1.4 million members. I sit on many local boards and conferences, and I have never had a staff member, a CEO, a president of an organization react in the manner that you do. Perhaps you should take an example from Mr. Tooley. Perhaps the reason he has the respect of so many people is the manner in which he addresses people, calmly, evenly, with respect to listening to them and answering the specific question that is asked, not shifting blame, not shifting to other answers, and not lecturing. I ask you to please stop shaming our city and start acting in more professional manners. It's not always the message you send, it's how you send it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next individual is registered as Maureen Brashaw, and I will unmute that individual now.
No, we're not going back. She had her chance.
Yes, sir. I don't see any other hands raised.
We have no need for executive session at this time.
I have a need for executive session. So I make a motion to move to executive session to discuss the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. So moved.
No. John, if you want an executive session, I think we should do it next time when you're here. It's been hard enough with these.
I'd appreciate a second if I could, and then have an executive session.
Sorry, John, doesn't seem to be a second.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn.